Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku became the legendary Super Saiyan? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Deep space and planet Vegeta. There was a nursery full of incubation pods where many infants lived on the Saiyan home planet, Planet Vegeta, which was named after a line of kings that shared the same name. One such pod contained a black baby with olive skin and spiky hair, who was sleeping in a state of homeostasis inside the incubator. He was in a green pod as well, and his Saiyan tail moved involuntarily, its muscles visible with each motion. Broly was the son of Paragus, a Saiyan scientist. The king himself, observing his son's pod with pride, was accompanied by a number of scientists outside his pod. Before he saw the green pod, the man remarked, "Ah, my son, one day you'll grow into a ferocious king, I'm sure of it." He asked, "Whose son is this?" One of the scientists stated, "His name is Broly, the son of Commander Paragus, sire. We have him here because, well." A female Saiyan says, "To put it bluntly, Your Majesty, his power level was well over 9,000. She looked at the child and said, "Maybe even 10,000, given our best estimates. What is he doing in this chamber? This is supposed to be reserved for potential assets." Vegeta the king screamed. "Oh, but young Broly could very well be an asset. In fact, some of us have suspicions that he may be the legendary Super Saiyan." The third researcher replied. The Saiyan leader became rigid as a result. He growled, "I want him sent to planet Vampa." One said, "Your Majesty?" The king says angrily as he leaves, his cape swishing dramatically, "Do it, now." Somewhere else, a Saiyan couple was attempting to spirit their own son, Kakarot, to a planet where he would be safe at about the same time, or perhaps a little longer. Bardock, the boy's father, wanted his son to be far from their home planet in case the bad thing that he suspected was about to happen actually happened. "Are you sure about this?" asked Jine, Bardock's wife. Bardock took his wife's hand and said, "I'm sure. This is the best way to ensure our son's survival." He asked, "Do you trust me, Jine?" Before nodding, Jine glanced at her husband and then at her baby boy in her arms. She nodded as she and Bardock held Kakarot close, saying, "I trust you." His father stroked his son's hair affectionately and said, "Be strong, Kakarot. I promise, if we can, we will find you one day." Jine sobbed as she said to her son, "And if we die, we'll see you again one day." This was the most difficult thing she would ever have to do, no question about that. Still bewildered and terrified, the boy sniffed as he clung to his mother before Bardock put him in the pod. As the pod closed, Bardock said to his son, "Good luck on Earth, Kakarot. This is goodbye." As they watched the pod launch into space and make its way to its destination, Jine started crying. Later, his father followed, while the infant Broly's pod was trapped in a ship and transported to the planet Vampa. But sometimes fate isn't that predictable. The smaller Saiyan was sent hurtling down to Earth's Kansai region of Japan after Broly's pod collided with Kakarot's pod and an asteroid on the way to Vampa. The smaller Saiyan was completely knocked off course, and the onboard tracker was destroyed. The younger Saiyan boy was sent to the same region as Broly's pod. As he proceeded to Vampa and discovered no sign of his son, this meant that his father, Paragus, would never know. Meanwhile, Broly would discover a much better world. One in which he would develop into a formidable warrior and his fellow Saiyan Kakarot would become heroes. Time skip. Approximately 4 years after the baby Saiyan's pod crashed in Japan, the childless couple Inko and Hisashi Midoriya adopted the boy. A wise old man named Gohan, his wife Pama, and their daughter Matabi adopted little Kakarot in the interim. The young woman became the boy's surrogate mother, and her parents became his loving grandparents. He probably wouldn't remember anything of his home planet because the poor kid had landed with a pretty severe concussion. Additionally, the small family of Free gave him the name of a legendary monkey to fit his simian traits. Goku-san. It's time for context. Everyone in this world possessed superpowers, also referred to as quirks, which manifested at the age of 4 or 5 for late bloomers. 80% of the population had superpowers, while the remaining 20% did not. Kakarot, Goku, and Broly, who his new family renamed Izuku Midoriya, could certainly make things work with what they had, even if they didn't have any peculiarities. They are listed in the following order. Their metabolism came first. It was difficult to keep up with the insane amount of food they consumed. In order to make up for this, the Izuku's mother planted a garden, which allowed them to easily maintain their supplies. Goku's family, on the other hand, lived in the country, where food was abundant. The tail, or stump, in Izuku's case, that their relatives discovered on them came in second. Before coming to Earth, they apparently also had simian tails, but Izuku's was cut off and cauterized, making it impossible for it to regrow. According to the Midoriyas, removing this body part indicated that a samurai was an outcast because it resembled his top knot. Meanwhile, Goku's tail was still attached. He changed into a giant ape during a full moon, and his family dealt with the situation quickly. He was calmed down by a number of heroes and a ton of food, and when the chance arose, the tail was severed. The boys' exceptional strength, endurance, and general toughness and resilience came in third. They all had superhuman abilities and, as far as they knew, no peculiarities. Izuku, in particular, had a temper that wasn't exactly helpful, but he was also very intelligent. Simply put, Izuku could probably turn a mountain into rubble if he was furious enough. Fortunately for most, when he was at ease, he had a very gentle touch that made him so approachable that animals would come to him and enjoy his company. However, both boys also had the advantage of being able to use their life force, or ki, as a kind of weapon or advantage. They were able to develop energy attacks, improve their physicality, and even fly to a lesser degree as a result. They appeared to have quirks because of this ability, but many doctors chose to label them as quirkless because they lacked a true quirk factor. The young boys already knew they were strong on their own, so this did little to deter them from becoming heroes. Prior to Matabi moving to Izuku's neighborhood and enrolling in the same elementary school as other local children, the two lived in different prefectures. For instance, Izuku was currently by himself in the woods with two deer fawns that he fed on a regular basis, petting them as they approached him. The boy petted them with a smile, but his peaceful moment was cut short when Katsuki Bakugo and his goons appeared out of nowhere and scared them away. Izuku appeared irate as they laughed. He never spoke to Bakugo or anyone else, even though he knew him from elementary school. He appeared to discover that interacting with people caused annoyance, which in turn caused anger, which in his case resulted in the destruction of things. With a sly smile, Katsuki punched his palm, setting off a tiny explosion. The boy glared at the blonde, who was at least 2 or 3 heads taller than the explosion user, and stood up. "Hey, Izuku Midoriya, right? This is your hangout spot?" the blonde asked. As his ki powered up, the green-haired boy answered, "Yes, and you scared my friends away. You're making me angry, Katsuki. You won't like me when I'm angry." Izuku sighed. All the Pomeranian could do was smile. And he challenged, "Show me." He approached a tree, looked at it, and took it, ripped it from the ground, and then crushed it with one hand. The blonde was supposed to be intimidated by the display, but instead it made his smirk turn into a big smile. The boy exclaimed, "Now we're talking," as he and his friends charged at Izuku and engaged in combat. Later, after slashing at each other for 30 minutes, Katsuki and Izuku ended the fight by repeatedly slamming their heads together, sending tiny shockwaves before the final blow sent them hurtling into 2 trees and collapsing in exhaustion, covered by a range of injuries. Sighing, the Saiyan said, "Head, hurts." Holding his throbbing head, Katsuki moaned, "Oh, Mom's gonna kill me. It would be shocking if this fight didn't cause him to get CTE." The children were lying there when the 2 fawns from earlier approached them and began licking their cheeks because his lackeys were also unconscious in the ruined forest. Izuku gave them a quick glance and grinned. He stroked the deer's head and grinned warmly, saying, "Good deer." After a few days, as Izuku and Goku sent Katsuki and his thugs flying across the playground, 2 tiny fists flew through the air, protecting a child the trio was torturing from any more damage. When he popped his neck, Izuku grunted, "Kachan, just stop already, it's not working." As the blonde blurted, "Like hell I'm gonna stop 'cause you tell me to." His palms sparked like explosions. Goku put himself in a martial arts stance and shrugged, saying, "Hey, I'm always down for more fights." Given that they simply rushed forward once more and were knocked back as they repeated this process multiple times, Katsuki and his thugs must have had a strong desire to illustrate what constitutes insanity. They didn't stop until they were unconscious. Izuku sighed as he sat on top of the 2 other children who had fallen on a heap and said, "I tried to warn them." Goku looked at Katsuki and whimpered, "Ah, I think he's broken." Then he turned and lit up when he noticed that the jungle gym was deserted. "Yeah," he exclaimed, zooming up to the top in a cartoon-like manner before he began to jump on it. "I'm king of the castle. I'm king of the castle," he was singing. Izuku sighed more angrily than most children should have. "Really, Goku?" Time skip. After 11 years, Izuku and Goku were both 15 years old and enrolled in the same middle school. Since childhood, both had undergone significant transformation. In Izuku's case, he was now a remarkable 6 foot 11 inches, pushing an even 7 feet, and his body was much more muscular than it had been as a child. His hair was also a little longer. He was still growing and was a very big child. In contrast, Goku didn't really change all that much, because he had been training with another friend of theirs, Krillin. Under Master Roshi's guidance, he simply became slightly taller and much more muscular than before. Izuku trained with the man as well, though not extensively. The perverted tendencies of Master Roshi did not sit well with him. When you're also an unrepentant pervert, being a skilled martial artist doesn't get you very far. He heard a commotion as the two of them were walking, and when he looked up, he saw that a giant villain was attacking the train station. "How many times have villains stopped the commute this month?" someone was asking. Another said, "7th, I think." "Oh joy," Izuku moaned, surveying his surroundings. He decided to examine what he was seeing and took out a notebook he carried with him. Goku sighed. "These people really don't learn, do they?" The taller Saiyan raised an eyebrow and asked, this coming from the guy who's near the bottom of our class academically. Goku retorted in shame, Shut up, it's not my fault they make the schoolwork so hard." Izuku flatly said, after hearing that argument many times over the years. He noticed that Backdraft had created a water barrier to keep the onlookers back and that Death Arms were preventing debris from striking civilians. Meanwhile, Kamui Woods was fighting the aforementioned villain. He jumped around the larger foe's attacks, and Izuku watched as he prepared his final move. The Saiyan remarked, "I can't really say that I think that's gonna work." Goku asked, "Why do you say that?" Just as the hero was about to strike, when a huge woman suddenly appeared and kicked the villain in the side. "And like that I retract my previous question," he grinned. The woman smiled and said, "No need to worry about this bum anymore, boys." Izuku grimaced. Exasperated, he said, "I'm just gonna go ahead to school," and left. Goku followed his friend and nodded, saying, "Right there with you." Later, when they arrived at their classroom, Goku entered first. The boy yelled to Izuku, "Watch your head." Just before he hit his head on the door frame, which was too low for him, Izuku fell victim to it. With the boy, this kind of happened all the time. "Ow." The Saiyan rubbed his forehead and said it flatly. A few people gave a little laugh, but he ignored them and sat down at his desk. Krillin told the Saiyan, "You really gotta learn to duck, man." The kind giant said, "Tried already. It's too difficult." He was correct. He always got a crick in his neck when he attempted to duck before hiding the frame. The same child remembered, "Oh. Right." Their teacher yelled, "Okay, calm down, kids," as class started. He took a stack of papers and went on, "Now, as third-year students, it's important to start thinking of your futures and what you want to do with your lives." He went on, throwing the papers into the air. "Now, I could pass out these career aptitude tests. But why bother?" The man went on to say, "I know all of you want to join the hero trek." Everyone's eccentricities were on full display as they began to cheer. Izuku was simply sitting at his desk, looking bored. Katsuki, on the other hand, laughed. The teacher said, "Yeah, you all have strong personalities, but don't use them in class." The other students yelled at him as he exclaimed, "Oi, don't lump me with the rest of these extras. I'm the real deal, but these guys will probably only get jobs as sidekicks to some busted D-lister, huh?" One of them exclaimed, "You think you're better than us, Katsuki?" as the others began to shout. The blonde said, "Let's go, I'll take you all on." In challenging fashion. Their teacher thought, "You have impressive test results. Maybe you will get into UA High." A girl said, "He's going to try for the national school?" Another child added, "But it's next to impossible to get in there." "That's why it's the only place worthy of me. I aced all the mock tests and I have the best chance of getting in." The brunette said. As he hopped on his desk, he added proudly, "I'll end up more popular than All Might himself, and be the richest hero of all time. The whole world will know my name, and it all starts with UA High." Bakugo went rigid when the teacher said, "Oh, Midoriya, Goku. I see you're both applying to UA as well." With a nervous laugh, Goku said, "Yep, you got us." Izuku calmly nodded and said, "I hope there's no problem with that." Everyone looked at him anxiously as a result. Krillin asked, "You sure that's a good idea?" "Yeah, I mean, you guys are strong as hell, but it's not like they'd accept someone without a quirk," a child responded. "Actually, that rule's been removed, so it's fair game." Plus I've been training constantly, so I should be able to at least get a passing grade. The Saiyan with green hair replied. Goku nodded with a relaxed smile and said, same here. The practicals will be easy. Katsuki yelled, you chuckleheads think you can beat me? The son of Bardock shrugged, making everyone freeze as Katsuki's blood started to boil. We have before. This won't be any different. Izuku nodded and said, he's not entirely wrong. You think Ua is gonna accept a quirkless giant like you? Or a dumbass like Goku? Katsuki asked. The Saiyan blurted out, hey, indignant. A red-eyed boy sneered, you don't even like fighting people. He began to yell, face it, Deku. You don't have what it takes to, but was interrupted when Izuku's pencil broke. Then the tall boy got up and loomed over him, staring down into his eyes. I may not like fighting people, but I am willing to cast that aside to defend the innocent if need be. Izuku said quietly. With a tone as hard as stone, he asked, if I am to become a hero, I must learn to do such things. Is that a problem, little Katsuki? The gentle giant was now so obviously charming that the rest of the class was taken aback. He appeared to have changed completely. When he's like this, sometimes I forget how different he is, Goku thought, his eyes wide. The Pomeranian looked sideways and tsked as the two stared at each other. Whatever. If you want to make yourself my rival, then fine. Just don't get in my way, he replied. The green-haired boy's softer manner returned as if nothing had happened, and he said, I think that's the most level-headed thing you've said all day. As they sat down together, Katsuki rolled his eyes. Goku shuddered and laughed, ehehehe, dodged a bullet, huh? As their class went on, he sighed and said, whatever. Later, Katsuki approached Izuku and waved a piece of paper in his face as he was preparing to leave school and head home. As he studied the paper, Izuku questioned, what's that? The exploder clarified, a ticket to the gym I go to. If you're going to be my rival, I want you to train like I do. The boy shot back, why? Maybe the way you train doesn't work for me. The blonde then handed it to him. While getting his bags, Goku called from his seat, I'll take it if Izuku doesn't want it. Before he left, the bomber gave Goku the ticket and shrugged, saying, suit yourselves. As he and the bald teenager approached the door, Goku called, hey Izuku, Krillin and I are gonna hit up Old Man Kai's ramen shop. You wanna come? As he gathered his belongings, Izuku answered, not today, but thanks anyway. Later, Izuku kept flipping through his notebook as he went, trying to come up with ideas for special moves, but he was interrupted when he felt someone bump into him. A female voice said, oof, sorry about that. Then, with a hint of surprise, Izuku looked up from his notebook to see a girl standing in front of him. He thought the girl had healthy thighs and was of medium height, perhaps a bit wider than some of the other girls her age. She has somewhat square eyes with yellow irises and black sclera, and she has noticeably long eyelashes on the sides and beneath her eyes. Her skin is a slightly darker shade of pink. Her body was athletic as well. Short, unruly, fluffy pink hair that was a shade lighter than her skin framed her face. Additionally, she had two thin, pale yellow horns that protruded from her head. They were hooked squarely and leaned diagonally to opposite sides. It appeared that they were somewhat flexible, bending slightly to each side. The girl hurried to apologize to him, but she stumbled backwards in surprise as she looked up at him. The boy's natural desire to assist began as soon as this occurred. With haste, he knelt down and extended his hand to her. He whispered, "Are you okay?" to her. The girl accepted the offered hand and nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." She asked, "Who are you?" The kind giant replied, "Izuku Midoriya, and you are?" As Izuku assisted her, the girl responded, "Mina Ashido." Her face turned a pale purple, and her heart began to race. "Hold on, what is this?" When she got a good look at Izuku, she mentally gasped just before her eyes almost popped out. My goodness, those neck muscles seem capable of cutting diamonds. She wondered how his uniform could contain such a physique as she thought in disbelief. Izuku hummed somewhat intriguedly, I don't think I've met anyone with naturally pink skin like yours." He pondered, "Is that because of your quirk?" Mina nodded and said, "Huh? Oh, yeah, actually. It is. And, what about you? You're real big for someone our age," she said. Izuku shrugged and said, "Higher than normal metabolism. It's not a quirk, but it is a thing for me," he continued. The pink girl said, "Oh." The kind giant asked her, "Are you going to the train station?" Mina nodded and said, Yeah, I was just headed there." "Do you know where I need to turn to get there?" she inquired. You just need to head south and take a right turn before making a left and heading straight from there. The train station will be 2 blocks away after that. The giant responded. Before having an idea and picking up a pen to write something on Izuku's hand, Mina said, "Thanks." She smiled and said, "Here, my number. Give me a call sometime when you're free, okay big guy?" As the girl walked to the train station, Izuku looked at the number written on his hand and said, Okay, with a hint of bewilderment. On his way home, the boy scratched his head. Whether he was young or now, he was never particularly well liked by women. Not because they didn't think he was attractive, quite the contrary, but rather because they were afraid of his intimidating size or because his gentle demeanor made him seem too innocent to date just yet. Therefore, receiving 2 numbers from a pair of girls in this manner was undoubtedly a positive boost to his self-esteem. This is new to me, he thought to himself. Somewhere else, at a nearby ramen shop, which appeared to be a straightforward wooden stand on a street, Goku started coughing and almost choked on some of his food. "What?" the boy exclaimed, turning to face Krillin. "You're gonna enter Shiketsu High? What the hell for?" he yelled. Krillin shrugged and said, "Well, it's already going to be crowded at UA, so I'm gonna try my luck at Shiketsu." He shrugged again and said, "UA feels a little too intense for me, anyway." Krillin would be evident throughout the nation because Shiketsu, the top course, was only surpassed by UA, but it was located in the Kansai region, whereas UA was in the eastern Kanto region. Even though they were teenagers, Goku still detested it when his friends were gone from him for extended periods of time, which is why he gave his friend puppy eyes as he hugged him. It was something that seemed to remain constant. He whimpered in hilarious dismay, "I wanted all of us to go to UA." Krillin sighed and gave his friend a hug in return, saying, "Ah, come on, buddy. It won't be that bad." Somewhere else. Back with Izuku. The boy was still considering his options after meeting Mina by chance as he typed her number into his phone as he went beneath a bridge. Unfortunately, though, his thoughts were cut short when he went beneath a bridge and a slime villain emerged from the sewers behind him. He gulped as he grabbed the Saiyan, but he flared his ki and pushed him back, saying, "A meat suit. Perfect timing." "What the?" he cried in disbelief. Izuku, trying to maintain a level voice as his ki flared, said, "You almost got slime on my uniform." As his ki turned green, he added, "That makes me angry. You shouldn't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry," he continued. The sludge villain yelled, "You think that scares me? I'll overtake you and make you my meat suit. I still gotta escape." The manhole cover was knocked off its spot at that precise moment, drawing both of their attention to it. There was a deep voice that said, "It's okay, everything is fine." The person who spoke continued, "Now that I'm here, that is." Izuku recognized the man at once after seeing him. "All Might!" he exclaimed in awe. Fearfully, the sludge man said, "No, not now." The hero shouted, "Texas Smash!" and threw his fist forward, scattering the sludge villain's body all over the place with a wave of pure force. With minimal effort, Izuku was able to maintain his position and avoid being knocked off his feet. As All Might gathered up the villain in a soda bottle, the boy tried to regain his balance, but the ordeal left him feeling a little lightheaded. The boy fell on his ass and moaned, "Whoa, dizzy." The number 1 hero approached him and asked, "Are you all right, young man?" As he stood up, the Saiyan sighed, been better." All Might apologized to him, saying, "I didn't mean to get you caught up in my justicing. Normally I'm much more cautious, but it turns out that navigating this city's sewer system is pretty difficult." "Ha ha ha ha," he said, laughing awkwardly. Izuku stated bluntly, "Right," before pulling out his notebook. "Anyway, could you?" He opened his notebook to find it already signed, and began to ask. With a blink, he said, "Well okay, then. If you don't mind my asking, young man, what is your quirk exactly?" "It looked like an augmentation type from where I was standing," the man responded. The symbol of peace did a double take when the boy said, "Technically speaking, I'm quirkless." He exclaimed, "Then what was that you did?" in shock. "To be honest, I have no concrete answer. You see, a friend of mine and I've had this power for as long as we can remember. Its origins are unknown to both of us." Izuku clarified. "Though I do have a theory, or two, but I won't bore you with the details," he continued. All Might appeared surprised by this and appeared to be deep in thought before being jolted out of it by something. Like the tortoise in crane schools, he seems capable of controlling ki, but that can wait. "I have to leave for the moment. Time is running out." Before he hurriedly said goodbye and leapt away, he gave it some thought. As Izuku watched him go, a significant thought came to mind. He exclaimed, "Crap, I forgot to ask him that." before launching himself into the air in pursuit of him and using his ki. All Might turned after hearing something behind him and was startled to see Izuku flying straight up. "Okay, now that's just ridiculous," he cried out loud. Over the winds, the Saiyan cried out, "I'm sorry for bothering you, but I really need to ask you something important," as he took off. The man asked, "Can it at least wait until we've landed?" The boy called back, "Of course. I'm determined, not crazy," as the Saiyan did a little tuck and roll after the two landed on a roof. He brushed himself off and shrugged, saying, "Well, that was better than last time." With an eyebrow raised, All Might asked, "I'm sorry, last time. Crashed in my neighbor's house, glass went everywhere, had to help fix it, and it took me weeks to get all the glass out of my skin," Izuku elaborated. In an attempt to advance the conversation, the number one hero stumbled and said, "Okay, what did you want to ask me?" As mentioned before, my friend's son Goku and I have very similar physiologies and are capable of using our ki to perform great feats thanks to the help of Master Roshi. The kid clarified. But in my case I was gifted with great strength and power that even surpassed Goku's since birth, but neither of us never developed a quirk. He went on. But I also know that in the world of heroes, there will probably be villains out there who are stronger than I am even with this strength at my disposal. The Saiyan clarified. He went on, "So, All Might, I want to know," as the hero's body started smoking without his knowledge. "Do you think it would be possible for the two of us to become a hero with our strength alone?" he inquired. Damn it, not right now, as smoke consumed his form, All Might thought. Izuku blinked and turned when he saw the smoke, but he was equally as shocked and perplexed when it cleared and a skeletal man appeared in place of the hero. The gentle giant's only response was, what?" The gaunt man remarked, "Most people would be shocked by what they just saw." As Izuku explained, "Confused is more like it." "Fair enough. But yeah, this is what I really look like. You know those fat guys at the pool who pretend to be buff? I'm like that," the small hero clarified. "How did this happen?" asked the Saiyan. A very unsightly scar on the hero's torso served as his response. A mix of surprise and mild rage compelled the boy to sit down and ask, "How?" "A fight I had 5 years back. My lungs were basically destroyed, and my stomach had a huge hole in it. The surgery to fix it made it where I can't eat as much, hence my appearance," he elaborated. The child questioned, "Was it Toxic Chainsaw? Or some other guy?" All Might shook his head and said, "You certainly know your stuff, but no, he got a few hits in, but none of them did this to me. No, this was from an even more intense fight. This one had to be kept under wraps so no one would know the symbol of peace was so badly injured," he went on. Who in the world would have the strength to harm All Might in this way? Izuku's eyes narrowed as he thought. "Right," he gave a nod. The man asked, "You sure are quiet, aren't ya, kid? But to answer your question, to be honest, I don't really have an answer for you. I'm sorry," he went on. "I think it's just something you'll have to find out for yourself." Izuku looked down at his shoes after seemingly processing this for a few seconds. All he could say was, "Oh." He was unable to pinpoint the reason, but he somehow believed All Might would know the answer. It seems that he was mistaken. Once again, the hero nodded. That being said, as the two of them departed to go to their separate locations, he continued, "I think that you and your friend should be grateful that you have such strong bodies, despite being quirkless. Who knows? Maybe the two of you could become heroes." Having much to think about, they left Izuku. "I would say that today wasn't a complete loss, even though I didn't receive a definitive answer. It might be possible," he said. Izuku thought as he leapt away. As All Might descended some stairs, he thought to himself, note to self though, keep that kid in mind as a candidate for One for All. Then he noticed that the bottle that contained the sludge villain was no longer there. He gasped, "Oh no." When he heard an explosion in the distance, he turned to face a rising column of smoke and was ready to take off flying again with Izuku. As he flew in the direction of the scene, he exclaimed, "What the?" Somewhere else, as a sludge villain forced a girl with an acid quirk to use her abilities to melt everything in her path, Goku and Krillin leapt out of the way. The blast earlier was caused by her acid hitting a few gas tanks for some grills. "How are we supposed to get close to that thing with all that acid being sprayed around?" Krillin screamed. "I don't," Goku cried, avoiding another stream of acid, just as a realization dawned on him. As every hero in a zip code rushed in, he smiled and flipped to avoid getting swiped by slime. "Ding dong," he called, "Krillin. Use solar flare." Before placing his hands to his head, the Baldy grinned and said, "I see where you're going." He shouted, "Hey slime face, check this out." Solar flare. Before he shot out a dazzling light that blinded the villain, and Mina, as well as the assembled crowd, including the professionals who had come. And when he heard the commotion, a certain legendary Super Saiyan with broccoli hair was flying overhead. He hummed, and then looked down. He became enraged when he saw the same Sludge villain from earlier holding Mina captive. "I think not," he exclaimed as he soared like a missile and crashed to the ground. As the boy popped his neck from side to side and gazed down the Sludge monster with an unflinching and unwavering glare, all of the heroes and onlookers present turned to stare at him in disbelief. "What? You again? Get out of my way, kid." The creature attempted to hit him, but Izuku deftly deflected the blow, and the boy was unfazed by the attack, not even moving. His aura flared, and he growled, his voice authoritative, "Let her go." The Sludge villain screamed, "I'd like to see you make me, brat," as he attempted to hit the boy, but his aura deflected his blows. "Ha! I knew that solar flare would get Izuku's attention," Goku laughed. Krillin asked, "Wait, that was your plan? I thought we were gonna rush that guy once he was blinded," he continued. "That was plan A, but then I remembered that blasting a Kamehameha at a villain holding a hostage is a bad idea." The Saiyan made the point. Since it was a stupid idea, the Baldy gave in and said, "Okay, that's a pretty good point." Using his thumb to poke the taller Saiyan and the still confused Sludge monster, Goku nodded and said, "Plus, I think Izuku's already catching on to what I had in mind." "Whoa! Look at Midoriya go!" exclaimed one of the men in Katsuki's hangout. "He's taking those hits and not even flinching," he continued. Another added, "I'll say, it doesn't even look like he even feels it," as Izuku clenched his fist and Katsuki looked on. As the Saiyan prepared a blow, the boy made a mental note, "I know that stance, he's about to use Paralysis Verde." Izuku shouted, "Paralysis Verde," and swung his fist. Green ki spread across the Sludge monster's body as soon as the boy's fist touched its face, causing the figure to abruptly become rigid. "What the? Can't move." Mina's mouth opened, letting her breathe, and the creature grunted. She yelled, "Get me out of here, please," and Izuku quickly pulled her from her attacker's grasp. "Now Goku!" The boy yelled as he leapt back, and Krillin retreated as Goku began assuming a stance. The bald boy joined Katsuki and the others, saying, "Here it comes." As he joined Izuku, the Saiyan boy called, "Ka-mi-ha-mi," as a blue ball of ki began to form in his hands. He screamed, "Ha!" and blasted the villain with a beam of unadulterated energy. The Sludge man began to scream, "Okraaa," before being blasted to pieces. Goku calmed down before abruptly reverting to his childlike behavior. He bounced up and down and laughed, saying, "Hey, did you guys see that? That was way stronger than last time, haha, it was awesome." Krillin deadpanned in response, "Yes, because that's more important than the collateral damage you caused." Izuku moaned, facepalming while holding Mina. Now I regret letting him finish that villain off." Even All Might, who was in the crowd, watched the show. "Key users are those three." He gave a mental gasp before turning to face Izuku. "Well," he thought, "I think he's the one." Later, the green-haired Saiyan sighed as he began his leisurely stroll home, but he gave his cheek a little pat as he thought back to the events leading up to the Sludge incident. That's why Mina thanked him for saving her with a quick peck on the cheek, which, if the boy was telling the truth, took him completely by surprise. As he continued to walk, he thought, her lips were actually really soft. That thought was interrupted by All Might, who burst out of an alleyway. "Booyah! I am here," he cried, striking a pose before an Izuku who was a little taken aback. He said, "All Might, why are you here?" After that, the big man shrank to his skeletal frame. The hero answered, "I came to talk about what you and your friends did today." The Saiyan realized and said, "Oh, that." He inquired, "What about it?" He started by saying, "You mentioned that you had no power at all, but instead it seems that in addition to your natural physicality, you're able to use ki as well," he said. The boy nodded, "Yeah." The blonde surprised the boy by saying, "Well, truth be told, what you three showed today made me realize something important. You kids do have what it takes to be a hero." He said, "Wait, really? Let me explain. You see, there are many stories about heroes and how they became great. But they all have one thing in common, their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. Almost on their own, just like you all did." The peace symbol clarified. As the Saiyan put it, "Just where is this going?" To Izuku's surprise and confusion, the man said, "The direction this is heading is that I believe that you are worthy of inheriting my quirk." Inherit? Asked the boy. Yes. People are always making guesses about my powers, like a sort of super strength or some sort of vulnerability. When I'm asked about it in an interview, I always make a joke and dodge the question. It's because the world needs to think that the symbol of peace is a natural-born hero. The man replied with a sigh. But I'm not. There's nothing natural about my abilities. I wasn't born with this power, it was a sacred torch that was passed on to me by someone else. He continued with his arms extended. With a keen interest, Izuku inquired, passed on? What's it called? It's known as One for All, a stockpiling quirk that grows in power as it's improved and passed along. He was told by All Might. And you young man, should you choose to accept, will be its next user, he went on. Without even pausing to consider it, he answered, I accept. As they shook hands, the man grinned and said, no reluctance, that's how I figured you'd respond. Good to hear. Somewhere else, in the meantime, with Goku. The boy's mother screamed angrily, what the hell happened? Did you get into another fight? Goku cowered in comical fear. A woman with a pair of blue eyes, a motherly figure, and bright, perm-styled hair stood over him. She appeared to have just turned 40. She was also wearing brown pants and a pink sweater. This was Goku's adopted mother, Matabi. With a stutter, Goku said, I was helping out in a VV villain attack, and waited for the slipper to fall. You what? Exclaimed the woman. Gulping, the Saiyan boy's shaking grew. He had a hostage. I helped finish him off when the hostage was clear, he exclaimed. Matabi pulled out a slipper and yelled, that doesn't excuse you from doing something dangerous and insane. Goku's expression changed to one of comical terror. It appears that the common flip-flop was used as a disciplinary tool by groups other than Latino families. With a sigh, Izuku raised what appeared to be a sizable refrigerator that All Might was sitting on above his head. The boy put down the refrigerator and said, remind me again why I'm doing this. I should be able to inherit One for All now and spend time training with it, not preparing my body for it. The blond man said to him, that may be true, but you never know when you might be wrong. He hopped down from the refrigerator and added, you'll spend time trying to bolster your body, but it'll be with the quirk already passed to you so we can use the remainder to train you in using it. Izuku shrugged and returned to his work, saying, that's fair, I guess. It means a higher chance of being able to handle it, anyway. As he deflated, the number one hero nodded and said, that is another reason. He pulled a hair out of his head and said, for now though. When you get home after our workout today, swallow this. If you swallow a sample of my DNA, then One for All will be transferred. He went on, we'll pick up from there. As he placed the hair strand in a snack baggie he had on hand from a previous snack, Izuku nodded and said, got it. Somewhere else. Now that Goku and Krillin were standing in front of a tiny house on a similarly tiny island, Goku asked, so who's this guy, exactly? The short teen answered, he's a hermit who knows a particular fighting style we could use ourselves. Fair warning, though. He has a perverted streak a kilometer wide, he stated bluntly. The Saiyan wrote, let's not mention him to my mom. As the two entered, Krillin nodded and said, yeah, it's better that way. They opened the door and saw a group seated at a table. Master Roshi. It's me, Krillin, the boy called. They were seated at what appeared to be a dinner table that was being used as a poker table, with the turtle wearing a visor hat as the dealer. The group included a small blue cat, a pig dressed in jeans and a shirt, a turtle, and an elderly man wearing sunglasses, an orange alphabet Hawaiian shirt, white shorts, and sandals. The old man smiled and said, all right, let's play. Deal us in, turtle. The turtle nodded, saying, right on. The pig warned the man, don't you try pulling out any cards out of your pockets. To get their attention, Krillin joked, don't get your hopes up. The man grinned and said, ah, Krillin. Glad you could make it. He turned to face Goku and said, and I see you brought a friend. Krillin tells me that you know some crazy strong training regiment. Goku said. He smiled and added, I want to see just how intense it is. Roshi nodded and stood up, saying, that I do. It's a rough regimen that not everyone can do themselves. He clarified, so I hope you're ready to get your butt kicked, figuratively, I mean. He continued. It can't be that bad, Goku said simply, calling up Murphy with a shrug. With a sigh, Krillin said, just wait, later. A few weeks later, Izuku was taking a day off to allow his body to recuperate from a strenuous workout that included pushing himself to the limit with One for All. He ended the test by destroying a whole row of trees with a single maxed-out punch, but the backlash that followed was truly remarkable. The fact that the arm he used for the test was actually injured told Izuku that the quirk had the ability to harm a Saiyan. However, as his limb healed, the boy's right arm was currently covered in medical bandages while he was strolling down the street. Someone bumped into him and fell as he was making his way to his favorite ramen stand. "Oh!" the person exclaimed as she collapsed, and Izuku turned to face the person and saw Mina Ashido lying flat on her ass. "Mina?" Izuku asked, blinking in surprise before assisting her in standing up. He thought, "I haven't seen you in a while." The girl took his hand and nodded. "You too, Izuku." Her gaze brushed the boy's muscular body as she asked, "Is it just me or have you become even more godlike since the last time I talked to you?" She loved reading romance novels like shoujo, and she will ogle any man who has even the slightest hint of attractiveness. Izuku shrugged and said, "I have taken up a new training regiment." With his injured arm raised, he continued, "Which has actually gotten me this." "Oh no!" exclaimed the girl, who hurried to the arm and held it carefully. She worriedly examined the injured limb and said, "You poor thing. Who could let this happen?" It was my fault. I went over the limit my trainer prescribed. No one's really to blame but myself," the Saiyan clarified. The pink girl angrily reprimanded, "Be more careful. I don't want your skin getting scarred." Izuku shrugged, then saw that the girl was trembling. "I have several scars already. That doesn't really mean anything at present." He questioned, "You're shaking, what happened?" Well, she trailed off as she started to tell Izuku about what had happened not long ago. Rewind. After school, Mina was browsing through her phone when she noticed two of her classmates cowering in terror from a huge fire that was currently enclosing them in a sheet. His voice was deep as he asked, "Where is the Springer Hero Agency?" With its fingers digging into the building behind the girls, he questioned, "You're not going to tell me?" He demanded, "Why won't you tell me?" Mina stood between them, staring the man in the eye and bracing herself for what she was about to do before the figure crushed the girls by bringing the building down on them. She pointed to her left and shouted, "Turn that corner and make a left at the big street. The place you're looking for is 2 kilometers from there." The giant remained silent for a beat before continuing. His final words before leaving were, "Thanks." A few moments later, as her friends consoled her, Mina collapsed to her knees and exclaimed, "Wow! That was so scary." Tears were streaming down her cheeks. One of the girls nodded and said, "Yeah, I can't believe what you just did." The other person inquired, "Where did you tell him to go?" The pink girl exclaimed, "The police station. Come on, let's get out of here before he comes back," as they ran. End of flashback. Izuku felt compelled to track down and strike the man for making Mina cry after she had finished speaking. Izuku sighed and held her shoulders, saying, "I'm sorry you had to go through that." He said, "Are you okay?" to her. "I'm just trying to calm my nerves right now. I'm just scared he'll figure out I lied to him and want me dead." Mina was shivering as she spoke. She raised her chin to look at him as the Saiyan told her, "Don't think about that. You don't have to be scared, I'll protect you," he continued. "You're a knight in shining armor like that," the pink girl said with a smile while giving him a hug. Izuku nodded, gave her a hug in return, and took her hand. "I want to be a hero. But I get the point. Come on, I know someone who can help you calm down," he said to her. Mina followed him out of curiosity to find out where he was taking her. He went straight to his apartment after deciding to postpone the ramen at old Kai's shop. He knocked on the door to inform his mother that he had returned. Inko called out, "I'm in the kitchen, sweetie." Izuku called out, "Thanks Mom." Mina looked at him, startled, when she saw where they were. Mina called, "Sorry for the intrusion." The matriarch of the household called back, "You're forgiven." Then the two went into the kitchen and saw Inko, a woman who had divorced her husband shortly after Izuku turned 10 because he was rarely home. The woman, who was in her late 30s, had green eyes, dark hair, and a plump figure that rivaled that of several models Mina knew. She was a goddess with viridian hair wearing an apron. The boy said to her, "Mom, this is Mina, she's a friend I met a few weeks ago." Looking at Mina, Inko asked, "So, what brings you to our apartment?" The girl told the adoptive MILF, "Oh I was just really shaken up after a villain encounter." As she went to do so, the woman said, "Oh dear. Take a seat on the couch and I'll get some tea ready." Mina nodded and said, "Thank you, miss." She stumbled out, saying, "It was a really scary experience. I nearly had a heart attack." Izuku put a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "At least you're okay." Inko inquired, Mina, what's your last name? The pink girl answered, Ashido. The matriarch from Midoriya asked, like the model Hahari Ashido? The response from Mina was, she's my mom. Why? My friend Mitsuki Bakugo happens to design a lot of the clothes she models, replied Inko. She inquired, how has she been? The acid-using girl smiled and said, pretty good. I actually didn't realize I'd be meeting one of my mom's friends. I never really talked to her in person, but I was at a few of her shows. Inko grinned. Mina nodded and said, perhaps I can persuade her to meet you then. Though there is one thing that has me worried about her, particularly recently. She thought about it. With concern, Inko questioned, what's happening? Mina sighed and said, she's trying to get back into the dating scene. My dad passed away from liver cancer when I was a little girl, and she hasn't started dating until now, she murmured. Given that Hahari had dated unattractive men prior to meeting her late husband, the green-haired woman worriedly inquired, she isn't dating unsavory men, is she? The opposite, actually, a lot of the guys were awesome with her. But, the minute that she mentioned marriage, they dipped out, she corrected them. When the tea kettle began to whistle, Inko blinked and shrugged, getting up to tend to it. Oh, well, I hope she finds someone. Izuku said, somewhat surprised, your mom's a model? Mina nodded and said, yeah. She models for a lot of things from dresses to swimsuits. Izuku nodded and said, that does explain a few things about you. He hummed, must be good genetics. The pink girl replied with a smile, like you wouldn't believe. Glancing at his muscles, she continued, same could be said about you, with those muscles of yours. Inko called in a foreboding tone, don't think I don't hear you hitting on my son. Mina yelled, eep. Izuku complained, Mom, stop it. I'm sorry. I don't know why she's like this, he murmured. I'm pretty sure all parents are like this, the pink girl moaned out of frustration. Tea? Inko asked with a smile while serving the two drinks. As he drank his tea, Izuku grinned and said, thanks, Mom. Mina took hers and nodded, what he said. Inko nodded, my pleasure, dear. Somewhere else. After a long, exhausting day of working at a construction site with their bare hands, even finishing it earlier than the other workers, Goku and Krillin were now relaxing in hammocks. In which the young Saiyan actually spoke with a girl and her parents at this exact location. They were obviously surprised that he handled all of their work. Ochako Uraraka was the girl's name, and she was genuinely kind to him, which, to be honest, helped him feel better about all the work he had to do. Krillin moaned, man, that was harder than I anticipated. Goku smiled as he thought, but it was worth it, at least. The Baldy laughed and said, hey. True. You're just saying that because you got a girl's number, aren't you? He asked. The boy thought, I guess that is a big deal, huh? The Saiyan pondered, what do you think Roshi is gonna have us do next? Krillin looked at the man sleeping in his own hammock and thought, no idea. Goku nodded and relaxed once more, but as soon as he felt his phone vibrate, he took it out. Ochako sent the text message. Additionally, she sent him a photo of herself jogging while wearing a tank top, pink track shorts, a pink headband, and pink ankle and wristbands. It did not hurt that she looked very attractive in that particular outfit. Time skip. It had been 2 months. The days were mostly spent running milk up the mountains to test endurance, something Krillin had trouble with, zigzagging through orchards to test agility, walking across canyons to test balance, reviewing academic lessons, and a variety of other activities. The work was challenging but strangely fulfilling. After supper, he and Krillin were swimming in the ocean close to Dagoba Beach when a woman's voice said, Goku? Ochako knelt by the shore and asked, what are you doing in there? She knelt down to the boy's level, showcasing her C-cup bust nicely in a pink bikini top with white polka dots, a matching bottom, and a cover-up skirt. She was stunning in the swimsuit, which really accentuated her voluptuous figure. Goku blushed slightly in surprise at her swimsuit and blinked, saying, hi, Ochako. After a moment, he answered, just taking a breather from training. The brunette nodded and said, you sure look like you've been training. I was coming here to do some swimming myself. But I'm glad I bumped into you. She grinned. Just as Ochako planted a kiss on his forehead, the Saiyan questioned, really? I wanted to thank you for helping my parents. You helping them finish that construction project really took some stress off their shoulders so they could find more permanent clients. The child grinned. She said to him, really, I can't thank you enough. With a greater flush on his face, Goku was able to respond without flinching, glad I was able to help them out. As she left the boy alone to swim alone, the brunette grinned and said, I hope we can see each other again soon. After emerging from the water a few seconds later, Krillin questioned, did you just get a girlfriend? A shrug was the Saiyan's response. Maybe. I honestly don't have a clue. Somewhere else. Izuku had just finished the last 3 months of his own training at this point, and a very anxious-looking Mina was bandaging him while All Might, or Toshinori in his deflated form, tried to avoid the girl's prying eyes. The girl bandaged the boy's forehead and hissed, trying to lift 2 rusted-out train cars like bench presses, without a spotter. What were you thinking? Izuku attempted to defend himself by saying, I thought I could handle it. Mina yelled, you're lucky it didn't crush you. Honestly, the way your body is quivering, it's obvious you're overworked. She continued. You used your quirk more times than we agreed between recovery periods, didn't you? All Might responded. The kind giant sighed and said, I did it because I needed to see how far my body could go with it. Mina made Izuku get up, and the symbol of peace sighed, we'll need to readjust your plan. She said to him, come on, you're coming with me. Where to? Izuku asked, inhaling to fill his lungs with air. My house. I have some supplies that'll help you heal faster so you don't lose your progress. The child responded. As the trio left, the Saiyan remarked, I hope they work. Later, when the two arrived at the pink girl's house, it was immediately apparent that it was a higher-class residence, much like the Bakugos. Nice, but by no means ostentatious. Mrs. Ashido obviously did not want to show off her wealth. Izuku blinked and said, this is more humble than I expected. My mom isn't the kind of woman who flaunts her wealth through architecture or cars, she prefers quality that looks good rather than just looks. Not to mention she already flaunts her beauty on the runway, anything more would be obnoxious. Mina told him as they entered the residence. As they entered, the Saiyan said, then you clearly have a good mom. Mina called out, I'm home, Mom. As the two removed their shoes. Welcome home, Mina my darling. Called a voice that sounded very feminine, almost British. Izuku would have been perplexed if Mina hadn't already informed him that her mother had lived in Britain for a long time. Shortly afterward, the woman herself appeared, wearing flat shoes, looped earrings, a pair of small framed glasses, and casual slacks and blouse. It was quite plausible that she was a model based on her figure. Because even after having a child, her figure was not at all fat. Rather, it seemed to have only served to accentuate her hourglass figure, which was already naturally curvaceous and voluptuous, with her blouse-clad chest and ass somehow appearing to be as large as some pro-heroes, if not larger. She resembled Mina in many ways, including having the same eyes, rose quartz-colored hair that appeared to be in a long, disheveled mane, and darker pink skin as her daughter. She was unique, though, because she had a long, prehensile, pink tail that was attached to her back. The woman looked at Izuku and raised an eyebrow, asking, oh my, who's this handsome-looking young man? Observing his bandages, she added, and what happened to him? This is Izuku, and he's gotten himself hurt after overworking himself during a workout. Mina clarified. Before she went to get the medical supplies, Hahari remarked, I'll go get the medical supplies. It must have been excessive if these were his wounds. As he played with an old bandage, Izuku said, you kinda made it sound like this all happened at once. A lot of these are a result of other older injuries. He continued. Mina made him sit on a couch and asked, and that's supposed to be any better? The Saiyan shrugged and said, at least I'm durable enough not to be too handicapped by them. The girl deadpanned, her face flat, it's not normal to get these many injuries. Hahari remarked, she's right, you know, as she returned with the medical kit. As she opened the case, she added, this number of injuries isn't a common occurrence. The boy said matter-of-factly, I'm not exactly normal. And I mean that literally. My friend Goku and I share similar attributes that no one really understands what caused them in us, genetically speaking. He clarified. As she gathered the supplies she would need to tend to the green-haired teen's injuries, the model inquired, what are the details? Just general attributable changes, higher durability and such, superhuman appetites and metabolism, the ability to turn into giant apes if we still had our tails. Izuku went on to explain. Wait, what? Mina blinkingly said, you guys had tails. Better yet, how'd you turn into giant apes because of them? She pondered. As Hahari began to change his bandages, the boy responded, we have no idea. Well, if you two were as young as, say, 2 years old when that happened and lost your tail sometime later, that answer doesn't surprise me. The girl who used acid thought. Hahari nodded and said, agreed. The boy shrugged and said, I don't really understand it either. As she continued to tend to the Saiyan's injuries, the model asked, that aside, how did you meet my Mina? I think it was when I was on my way home from school. We literally bumped into each other, if I recall. Izuku responded with a remark. Yeah, I'd never seen someone like you in terms of fitness before that point. Mina laughed. She clarified, well, except All Might. The boy nodded, and Hahari laughed a little as she completed applying new bandages and medication to the boy's wounds. Thanks, I guess. She laughed and said, you two are adorable together. Mom. Mina exclaimed in a humorous way, embarrassed. Izuku, on the other hand, didn't initially respond until his face flushed and his mind finally made sense of what the woman was implying. The boy, looking away in embarrassment, coughed and said, thank you. Time skip. When All Might arrived at Dagobah Beach at the end of the 10-month period to check on his student's completion of his assignment, he was taken aback by what he saw. It was Izuku, standing on top of a massive pile of trash, facing the now rising morning sun, and roaring with triumph as he pounded his chest like the great apes of the Saiyan homeworld. What the fuck? Toshinori exclaimed, gazing out at the shoreline. His eyes went wide as he said, whoa, you cleaned the entire place up, even the area outside of what I assigned you. There isn't even a bottle cap left. Before looking at his watch, you've surpassed my expectations in just 2 hours. He added, still in disbelief. Incredulous, he exclaimed, holy, stinking, super crap. As he got buff, Izuku snarled and growled as he struggled to catch his breath. His body trembled with effort as he leapt to the ground, his top layer of clothes, now in ruins, falling off him as soon as he touched down. What truly astounded All Might, though, was that his pupil had seemingly acquired something more than just a much stronger physique. It appeared as if he had managed to regain his natural simian tail. Master Roshi, who saw that the boy had a noticeable tail stump, was partially responsible for this. He claimed to have assisted a monkey in getting a new tail after his own was injured by pulling on it to lengthen new vertebrae that had grown into position and were backed up in the monkey's spinal column. The Saiyan boy wondered how that could be possible, but he didn't ask for long because the man spent time with a talking pig, a cat, and a turtle. Izuku took a water bottle from his backpack and drank half of it, panting, 10 months, 10 long months, and the results show themselves clear as day. All Might said, I don't think I remember you having a tail. The boy said, it grew back apparently, which honestly surprised me. He extended his now stronger tail and said, I guess I can now use my Ozaru form once more. As he began to deflate once more, All Might said, just promise me you won't go rampaging in that form. At any rate, the entrance exams should be a breeze for you now. He concluded. Izuku grinned and proudly flexed his arm, saying, thanks. Later, around this time, Goku was just starting to wake up when, while brushing his teeth, he also became aware of a change in himself. He had regrown his own tail. He yelled in shock, what the? When did that happen? Gohan, his grandfather, came to see how his grandson was doing and noticed the tail. Goku, is something wrong, son? Oh my. He blinked and said, that's unexpected. Goku moaned, oh man, things are going to be so weird now. Perhaps this time, we should try to help you control this form of yours, since it's clear that simply removing your tail doesn't seem to work. Gohan thought. The young Saiyan moaned, yeah, but training to control the form is gonna be a chore. Whether he was a training junkie or not, he was aware that the end result would be mental exhaustion. Matabi shouted from downstairs, what's this I hear about your tail being back? Which made her son lock up. He began to whimper, oh no. Gohan grinned and gave his grandson a head pat, saying, I'll talk to her. It's okay. Later, astonished, Goku looked at Izuku and said, whoa, your tail grew back too. He added, his tail swishing in utter surprise. Izuku smiled and laughed, asking, what are the odds of this happening to both of us? Nodding, the Saiyan said, I dunno, but it's freaky. Hey, did you happen to meet anyone during our 10 months? Krillin and I met a girl and a new mentor. He went on. The kind giant answered, same with meeting a new girl, along with her mom who happens to be a friend of Kachan's mom. As the two boys headed toward the entry hall, until he was tripped by his own tail, Goku laughed and said, no kidding. With his silly smile still on his face, he thought to himself, stupid tail. Then he stopped falling abruptly, blinking in bewilderment before he recognized the person. As he straightened himself, he grinned and said, "Thanks for the save, Ochako." "No problem, Goku," the brunette said with a smile while assisting him in standing up. Before noticing his tail, she smiled and said, "It's good to see you again." She said, "Whoa, that's a frickin' tail." Izuku added, swaying his own tail, "He's not the only one." She exclaimed, "Wow, what happened? Wait, who are you?" she asked, her expression bewildered. In response, Izuku joked, "Izuku Midoriya, the only brain cell between me and Goku." Goku whirled around to face him and yelled, "Hey," almost breaking his neck. Ochako inquired, "You guys worried about the exam?" Izuku casually answered, "That depends on the portion you're talking about." He shrugged, adding, "For me, I think I can handle it." Goku laughed uneasily and said, "I'm mostly worried about the written test." With a nervous laugh, the gravity girl agreed, "Yeah, this is pretty nerve-wracking." Later, Goku was asleep at the time, but the voice hero, Present Mike, was in the auditorium explaining the practical exam to the prospective students. Katsuki slapped the boy awake and said, "Wake up." "Huh." The Saiyan boy awoke with a gasp. "Will you pay attention?" Izuku whispered to him. Goku asked, "What happened?" "3 villain types, each worth 1, 2 and 3 points. We gotta get enough points to pass," Izuku said quietly. The combat junkie nodded and said, "Oh, thanks." At this, a teenager with glasses got to his feet. "Excuse me sir, but I have a question," he replied. Mike yelled, "Hit me." As a spotlight came on, he held up a list of the enemies that would be present and exclaimed, "You mentioned only 3 enemies, but there are 4 listed. If this is a mistake, then it is unforgivable for such a renowned institution." He went on. Goku asked, "Whoa, who's the buzzkill?" Izuku shrugged in response, "No clue." The teenager turned to face the 3 boys and added, "Additionally, you two with the unkempt hair. You've been talking this entire time. Stop that. If you can't take this seriously then leave, you're distracting the rest of us." He yelled. With a, "Fuck with me, see what happens" look, Izuku shot the child down and shot back, "I don't recall asking for your opinion." Present Mike interrupted, saying, "Chill you two. That 4th one is a 0-pointer. It's like an obstacle in the whole exam, so it's not worth fighting." He clarified. "Why do I get the feeling that there's something he's not telling us?" Goku murmured. Izuku sighed, "I think we'll figure that out the hard way." Later, Izuku was at his testing location, dressed in his go-to black skin-tight shirt, green pants, and shoes. He shrugged and said, "I guess it's time to see what happens." Then he saw Mina, who he recognized. He blinked before deciding to approach her, saying, wasn't expecting her to be here." When he got to her, he gave her a shoulder tap. "Huh, Izuku," Mina exclaimed, leaping into the boy's embrace. Izuku smiled as he gave the hug back, saying, "I thought we would be at different locations for this, but I guess I was mistaken." Mina nodded and gave him a joyful neck hug, saying, "Seems that way." One of the other examinees said, "Those two seem pretty close." "Think they're dating?" asked another. "Lucky," murmured another girl. With her yellow eyes and long canines, the ash-blonde girl had a cat-like appearance. Himiko Toga was this person. She was placed in a separate testing area and was Ochako's friend. Actually, rewind. Shortly after Krillin and Goku had assisted her parents with their construction site, the girl looked at Ochako and exclaimed, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. You met a guy and you didn't tell me." The gravity girl told her friend, "I didn't want you putting pressure on him since he seems like the awkward type." Himiko complained, "No fair. We'll meet him at UA more than likely, just wait until then." Ochako sighed. The blonde moaned, "Fine." End of flashback. Mina grinned and gave Izuku a cheek kiss, saying, "Good luck out there." As the gates began to open, Izuku nodded and grinned slightly. "Hey, you too." Izuku snapped his head toward the gates as soon as he heard them move, and then he flew into the made-up city. Somewhere else, at the same time, Goku was involved in a similar situation. However, the bespectacled teen from earlier stopped him before he could even attempt to approach Ochako. The teenager said, "She appears to be attempting to get ready for the challenges that lie ahead. What are you going to do? Distract her and ruin her chances of succeeding?" he asked. Goku frowned and asked, "Are you always this rude to people who simply want to talk to a friend?" He didn't like his demeanor. Then, to the surprise of the bespectacled boy, the Saiyan's tail grabbed his wrist and pulled it away from his shoulder. Then, deliberately ignoring the murmurs around him, Goku headed for Ochako. The boy grinned and said, "Hey Ochako." The brunette yelled, "Goku," and gave the boy a startled hug. The battle junkie laughed as he gave the hug back, saying, "I wasn't expecting us to be at the same testing area, but I'm not complaining." As the exam started, Ochako nodded and said, "I hope it goes well." Somewhere else, even without his key augmentation or one for all, the Saiyan's fists made the robot's metal chassis crumble like paper under his punches and kicks, so the boy was having a fairly easy time taking down the robot's back with Izuku. Feeling rightly that she wouldn't receive any points if she stayed with Izuku, Mina made the decision to go off on her own in order to gain some. Every robot fell to him before she could react, so she was correct. The Teen Mountain screamed, "Eraser cannon," as he threw a key fastball at a three-point shooter, vaporizing it as it hit the ball. "Omega Blaster," he added, compressing a marble-sized orb and hurling it at 5-pointers climbing a building from which a young boy with balls for hair was bouncing before it burst and destroyed them and the structure. Not wanting to be left behind, Izuku gave his handiwork a small smirk before continuing. "That guy's a monster," Himiko exclaimed, scurrying away from a robot she had just blown the fuse on. Somewhere else, Goku shouted, "Kamehameha," as he launched his trademark strike at the robots he was aiming for. They were ultimately blown to scrap metal with little to no resistance. The boy shouted, "Phew! This is easier than I thought," and sprinted off to find more robots to eliminate. Judo even flattens a single pointer on the spot by flipping it. Somewhere else, since Goku's grandfather was more knowledgeable about his grandson's other form, the Uzaru, Roshi remarked as he sat with the elderly man with the UA teachers, "Gotta say, Gohan old friend. Your grandson is certainly something." Gohan nodded proudly and said, "Yes, he's a prodigy when he's able to take action." He sighed and added, "I just wish he had better academic performance." Roshi laughed while scratching his nose and said, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. Goku might not be the brightest bulb in the box, but if he studies, he does pretty well." He grinned. All Might remarked, "That's definitely a reassuring assessment." As he observed Izuku's performance, Snipe remarked, "The bigger kid looks like he's having a blast." Nezu nodded and said, "Izuku Midoriya. Like young Goku, he too has a similar simian tail and similar abilities as well. Very interesting," he continued. As his successor crushed another robot, Toshinori nodded, "Yeah, and he makes great use of his strength. I've seen what he's capable of, it's remarkable," he continued. Somewhere else, in the meantime, Izuku was eating what appeared to be a piece of fruit while perched on top of a stack of robots that he had just destroyed when the ground began to tremble. Before the shaking intensified and a huge shadow loomed over him, he said, "What the?" His eyes widened in surprise as he turned to see the zero-pointer towering over the city. He moaned, "You have got to be kidding me." Izuku, meanwhile, just kept sitting where he was while the other applicants began to flee in terror from the enormous robot. "It's a big robot, why's everyone so worried?" he thought. A voice exclaimed, "Help! I'm stuck," with agony. This made Izuku's ears perk up, and he turned to see Mina lying on the ground with her lower body pinned beneath a section of wall as Himiko heroically attempted to free the girl but was unsuccessful. Izuku stood up, glaring angrily at the zero-pointer, and crushed the fruit in his hand before throwing it aside with a growl. As he began to grow and transform, the boy slammed his fists to the ground and crumpled the concrete like paper, yelling, "Uzaru." Before long, he transformed into a gigantic ape. His ears became pointed and his face developed a muzzle as he grew, and his shoes and shirt were ripped to pieces. But his pants were all right. Lips curling in a show of intimidation, the great ape snarled and flashed its fangs at the giant robot before beginning to pound on its chest like a gorilla to a rival. Somewhere else, when Izuku transformed into a skyscraper-sized ape, the faculty minus Gohan, Toshinori, and Roshi all yelled in surprise back in the observation room. "What the?" exclaimed Powerloader. Snipe asked, "What is that thing?" Gohan stepped forward and said, "That." He went on to say, "As the Uzaru. The great ape." Roshi went on, "One of the most powerful things Izuku and Goku have." Toshinori grinned and said, "And one of the most impressive." Somewhere else, A similar scenario was occurring in Goku's vicinity at the same time, with Ochako trapped beneath debris that had been knocked down by the approaching zero-pointer. I don't think so, Goku growled, an expression on his face. Ooh-za-ru, he exclaimed as he changed as well. Although he was still quite large, his great ape form was surprisingly smaller than Izuku's. When the robot with 0 points attempted to strike him, Goku intercepted the metal fist and crumpled it with minimal effort. He then did the same to the other arm before opening his ape-like maw and blasting a bright beam of light at the bot's face, destroying it. Somewhere else, he snarled as he took a punch with his 0-pointer and ripped the arm off, throwing it away, and returned to Izuku. Izuku wasn't finished, but this caused the bot to restart. With the same beam, he roared at the robot, RAAAAAAAAGH, and destroyed its entire top half, causing its head to crash on the ground on top of its demolished lower half. When she was back with Mina, she could only watch in amazement as Izuku completely destroyed a huge robot that would have likely crushed her. What is he? As the Saiyan roared in triumph over his mechanical opponent and pounded his chest, she pondered. Then he paused and looked at the pink girl who was still trapped, her hand reaching for the rubble, lifting it and pinning her so she could get out. As he gazed at the girl, the giant ape's face appeared to soften, demonstrating that he was still the same kind giant despite his altered appearance and hideous exterior. When Mina and Himiko saw this, they couldn't help but smile because they felt reassured by it. Izuku slowly returned to his normal form, revealing his more muscular body and numerous scars from his training and excessive use of One for All. He was now without a shirt or shoes. He hoped the wounds weren't too severe and asked, "Are you two all right?" Mina gave a nod, "Yeah." Her smile turned to Himiko as she said, "I'm Mina Ashido, thanks for helping me." The blonde smiled back, "Himiko Toga." Izuku smiled softly and nodded, saying, "Nice to meet a new friend." Himiko grinned and said, "Me too." Mina, who had to stand on one leg because of the leg injury, said, "Hey, can we swing by the infirmary? I think I got some cracked bones in my leg from the rubble." The boy nodded and moved to the side just as Recovery Girl, an elderly woman, approached them. "I think I may know someone who can take you." She turned to face Mina and said, "Oh my, what happened to you, sweetie?" "Got caught under some rubble. I would have used my quirk, but I'd already used it a lot. I didn't want to cause my skin to start cracking." Mina clarified. Himiko swallowed, "Yikes, talk about a bad side effect." Izuku nodded, his eyes wide, agreed. The old woman nodded and did what she did best. "Well, let me get that wound of yours taken care of, then." Mina's body healed quickly and returned to normal in a matter of seconds after she kissed the wound like a grandmother would her grandchild. Himiko moaned, "Lucky," which made Izuku laugh. Somewhere else, Goku gradually returned to his normal self before rushing to Ochako and rescuing her from beneath the debris. As he removed the remaining debris from her, he inquired worriedly, "Are you all right?" The girl moaned in agony, "I think I broke my ankle under that rubble." The Saiyan answered, "We can get you to the nurse, she'll be able to patch you up." The brunette said, "Oh okay. Think you can carry me there?" As he lifted her in a bridal carry, Goku nodded and said, "Oh yeah. Easily." The brunette exclaimed, "Eep," as he lifted her. Later on, in the nurse's office, Recovery Girl grinned as Ochako's ankle was treated, saying, "There, that should fix it." The brunette grinned and stood up, just as the door flew open and Himiko hurried in. "Thanks ma'am." With tears streaming down her cheeks, the blonde exclaimed, "Ochako." As she rushed to embrace her best friend. "I just heard what happened. I can't believe I wasn't there to help you, I'm so sorry." She was crying. The brunette reassured her, "Don't worry, Himiko. Goku was there to save me." The blonde inquired, "The guy you mentioned. Where is he now?" "I think he went to talk to Izuku, another friend of his." Ochako answered. Himiko thought, "Dude's pretty popular, huh? You two close?" she asked with a smile. The brunette huffed back, "I only met him 10 months ago, you devious cat." The brunette covered her face in shame as the blonde grinned and said, "That sounds like close to me, girl." Later, as he sat down at the dinner table with his mother and grandparents, Goku moaned, "Man, that was a rough exam." With his stomach rumbling, he continued, "Gives me a serious appetite." "I bet it does, so your mother and grandmother whipped up a celebratory feast for you." Gohan replied. "A bowl of fried rice, red bean balls, a bowl of ramen, trays of chicken drumsticks, steaks over onions, potatoes, and green beans, and a few other side dishes were brought in by Pam and Matabie, who grinned and said, "A deluxe meat dish." As the food was placed on the table, Goku cried with delight, "Oh boy! Thank you so much, because I'm starving." As Pam watched her grandson eat, she sighed, "He hasn't changed." Gohan asked, "Is that really a bad thing though?" Matabie replied with a smile, "Not even close. Somewhere else." Meanwhile, Izuku is back. "Well, I'm certainly not regretting getting my tail back," the kid said. After her son had completed narrating the events of the exams, Inko grinned and said, "I bet." The boy almost choked on his rice when she said, "You certainly seem to be getting close to Mina." He coughed, Yeah. Guess I am." The woman with the green hair smiled and teased, "Should I expect you two to be dating soon?" Before clearing his throat, the Saiyan gaped for a few seconds like a goldfish out of water. "I'm not really sure. It honestly depends on Mina," he responded. Inko said to him, "Well, I just hope you get a girlfriend soon. You've been alone for so long, sweetie, and Mina looks like she's good for you." She continued. Izuku nodded and said, "I suppose so, yeah." Mitsuki Bakugo called the woman as he was saying this. The woman said, "Mitsuki. What a surprise, something wrong." The statement, "Hahari's found a man, and he's widowed just like her," was made by Mitsuki without any introduction. Inko grinned and said, "Really? That's great. Good for her. I know. I'm planning on going to see her tomorrow. Are you free then?" She asked if I could bring you specifically. The brunette replied. The MILF with the green hair nodded and grinned, saying, "Yes, I am free tomorrow. I gotta see what this is all about." "Why did she ask for me specifically though?" she inquired. "She wants some help figuring out how to avoid scaring him off, and you're the best at that," replied Mitsuki. She added, "Divorce circumstances notwithstanding." Inko nodded, saying, "I see." To Inko's surprise, the blonde MILF added, "She also said she wants to meet the mom of her daughter's future boyfriend." After a beat, Inko shrugged and said, "Fair enough." She inquired, "What time?" Mitsuki answered, "We're thinking of having brunch." Izuku, on the other hand, was merely eating his food, unable to understand what his mother was discussing with the mother of one of his closest friends. Another moment later, he shrugged. He had nothing to do with it. Time skip. Izuku and Goku received their acceptance letters from UA a few days later, informing them of their admission status. The giant teenager opened his envelope and took out a holoprojector, thinking, "Let's see what the verdict is." Goku discovered the same thing when he opened his own envelope. Confused, the boys asked, "What the?" Both boys turned on their projectors, curious about what was going on, and were met by, "I am here as a projection," All Might said, grinning that he always does. "What the?" asked Goku, squinting. Izuku said, "Hold on." They both said, "All Might's teaching at UA. Apologies for the wait, young Midoriya Goku, but as you can see, I'm one of UA's newest teachers and with that responsibility comes a lot of paperwork." The man shouted. "Yeesh," moaned the boys. The man went on, "As you might have guessed, you passed the practical exam." With reference to Goku in particular, All Might continued, "But your written scores were a bit lacking in some areas." "Aw man," moaned the battle junkie. "But a passing grade is a passing grade." But while your score was at passing, there was another factor that brought it about a, just, passing grade. The peace symbol stated. He went on to say, that being the rescue point system. Rescue points. Goku and Izuku both blinked simultaneously. These points are assigned by a panel of judges based on heroic actions that revolve around helping others. The individual clarified. As their final scores were displayed, he yelled, "So, with this in mind, Izuku Midoriya, Son Goku, final score, 80/85 points." The boys grinned as they witnessed this. It was undoubtedly an incredibly fantastic turn of events. As their recordings came to an end, he concluded, "These scores have landed you in UA's hero course. This is your hero academia." Exhausted and relieved, Izuku sighed as he leaned back in his chair, until a text message vibrated on his phone. He noticed that it was from Mina. He grabbed a bottle of Ramune from his desk and drank it. However, when he opened it, he was met by the pink girl in the skin-tight black pants and matching bra, and he could see her ass quite clearly. It was inevitable that someone would almost spit out. "Does my butt appear large in this tracksuit?" The words appeared beneath the image. Izuku's face flushed because Mina was undoubtedly attractive. He paused to collect himself, then answered. If it does, is that really a bad thing? He asked. He went on to say, a lot of guys like girls with quote, big, gorgeous asses. Mina replied with a wink emoji via text, flatterer. She grinned and said, you're not too bad yourself, big guy. Izuku texted, you really love seeing my muscles, don't you? And included a follow-up photo of him exaggerating his left arm for emphasis. I'm a teenage girl who loves shoujo romance manga looking for the perfect boyfriend. What do you think, killer gorilla? The teenager replied. Izuku gave in and said, point made. Anyway, I managed to get into the hero course. What about you? He inquired. Same. Guess that means we're gonna be pretty close to each other. Mina replied. The boy said, this is your way of asking me out when school starts. The acid-using girl responded one final time before their conversation came to an end. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You won't know until we see each other in class. I think I'm gonna sleep on that. Izuku shrugged and retired to his bed. Somewhere else. In the meantime, Goku. The boy burst out of his room and yelled, Mom, open the champagne cause I got into UA. The woman smiled and took a big bottle of champagne from the refrigerator, saying, magnificent news. 2 extraterrestrial heroes were set to enter UA's corridors. Shortly after receiving the acceptance letter from UA, Izuku lay in bed and, to be honest, did not do much because the previous few months had been too much for the Saiyan to handle. Soon after, he received a text message from Mina while he was still lounging on his bed, throwing an all-might beanbag ball into the air, and catching it in a predetermined loop. He looked at the photo she sent, which showed her grinning down at the camera while wearing black underwear, black panties, and a black bra. Her ass was clearly visible. Like what you see? She asked, accompanying her text with a kiss emoji. With a huge flush on his face, Izuku texted back in admission. A little. Mina responded with a matching emoji, you have a terrible poker face. Using a milk and peach emoji as a kind of innuendo, she asked, so, what do you like best? To which Izuku answered, the latter. She understood his meaning and grinned, more of an ass man. Izuku used rhetoric in his question, are you aware of how yours looks? The pink girl teased, I see your point. I guess I'll have to give you more chances to look at it. The young Saiyan found that comment to be highly stimulating, and as he read it, his body, and tail in particular, reacted almost immediately. Without even being close, this girl was able to elicit this response from him. She is unquestionably a keeper. But this was short-lived because he soon received a message from All Might. Come by Dagoba Beach, I want to have a talk with you while I have the chance. It said. Later, with a sigh, Izuku headed to the beach where he finished his training and discovered his mentor waiting for him. As he approached the symbol of peace, the Saiyan called out, hey. The blonde said to his student, I'm glad you stopped by. I wanted to talk to you about your exam performance. Izuku nodded, saying, I saw my points. He said, anything of note to say? You and young Goku have definitely left your marks on the faculty. You two are absolute powerhouses. The man replied. He laughed as he added, any villains that try attacking you might as well be praying to the heavens. That was probably due to our secondary forms, the Uzaru, right? The child responded. In response, the no. One hero informed him, yep. Seeing you destroy the zero-pointers with those forms has given them a good idea of your strength level, and it's pretty high. Izuku nodded, that's good to hear. The backlash from One for All is a serious issue. Even if I'm able to withstand it, it's not going to work long-term as is. He stated. The man nodded and thought, agreed. There has to be some way to get your body to adjust to it. But what that thing will work out to be is another thing entirely. He was thinking. Izuku sighed and thought, it's going to take some time to figure out what that is. Somewhere else, the teachers at UA were going over the entrance exam results the following day. Powerloader asked, hey, anybody got any notes on the exam results? Vlad King pulled up the results and said, I got it. Personally, I'm most interested in the 2 boys with the simian-type quirks. 13 gave a nod. Ectoplasm pondered, that kind of transformation-type quirk is exceedingly rare. What about what they did to the robots before the zero-pointers showed up? Were those part of their quirks? Snipe pondered. More than likely that's a version of the strength their great ape forms are capable of in miniature. Midnight said. That's actually interesting. They seem to have good control over their power in both forms, too. Nezu remarked. I'm not surprised. Young Goku's mentors are his grandfather Gohan and the elder man's mentor, Master Roshi, the turtle hermit. All Might gave a nod. Everyone whispered, the famous martial artists. A certain underground hero stood off to the side, analyzing Izuku and Goku and unsure of how to react to them. Time skip. After about a week, Izuku let out a small sigh and kept packing his backpack for his trip to Ua, making sure he had everything he would need so he wouldn't need assistance. As she prepared to send her son off to his first day at Ua, Inko asked, "Do you have everything you'll need, honey?" The young man nodded and said, "Looks like I do." The woman nodded, then gathered her burly son in an embrace. "Good." With a soft smile that only mothers could learn to use, she said, "I'm so proud of you, sweetie." The kind giant grinned and gave the hug back, saying, "Thanks, Mom." Somewhere else. At the same time, Goku was finishing up a whole 3-course breakfast in the Sun family farmhouse before he had to leave for school. When the boy was at school, his mother and grandparents were a little worried that he wouldn't eat much at lunch. It wasn't because he wasn't hungry, but rather because the school didn't have enough food. If that prophecy turns out to be accurate, they might have to give Goku enough lunch to last the day. While eating her breakfast much more slowly, Pam told her grandson, "Goku, your breakfast is supposed to be eaten in a timely fashion but also savored. Not inhaled." Between mouthfuls, Goku whimpered wryly, "But it's so good." Matabi moaned, "He's going to clear out the entire cafeteria." As Gohan muttered in agreement, "And a nearby market if he finds one." Later, when they arrived at Ua, the two Saiyans headed to their classroom, unsure of which class they would be in. Goku said, "Hey Izuku, what's your class?" as they made their way through the corridors of their new school. The kind giant remarked, "Class 1A, it was on our acceptance letters, remember?" "Oh yeah, where even is it?" asked the mentally challenged Saiyan. Izuku started to respond but stopped when he noticed their destination to his left. Goku also saw it, and both of them blinked at how big the door was. "Well, at least I don't have to duck under the door this time." The kind giant shrugged its shoulders. As the two opened the door, Goku nodded, "Yeah. Get your feet off of that desk," yelled Katsuki, the same bespectacled teenager from the test. Goku scowled and said, "Oh great, him again." Izuku arched an eyebrow in response. He questioned, "Am I missing something? He's the guy who was giving us a hard time in the entrance exam, remember?" declared the shorter Saiyan. The taller Saiyan clarified, "I remember, I just got the sense you had more of a hard time with him than I did. We shared the same exam area, so you'd be right." Goku gave a nod. Before both of them noticed the two Saiyans in the doorway, the bespectacled boy and the Pomeranian argued for a minute or two more. Before racing up to them, the blue-haired teen said, "It's them. I'm Tenya Iida, and I would like to apologize for my prior behavior toward you both." He bowed as he addressed them. Izuku nodded in response and said, "Apology accepted." "Yeah." Goku gave a nod. Izuku was soon the target of someone jumping into his arms and embracing his neck after the three boys stood in a momentary silence. "Hi, Izu," Mina sang, smiling as she glanced up at him. Izuku laughed and said, "Well, today is certainly going well." Goku asked, "What the? Who's this?" The taller boy responded, "Mina Ashido. I met her a short while before I started training for the UA entrance exams." The pink girl nuzzled herself against Izuku's cheeks and grinned, saying, "He's just being modest. We actually started dating last week." Katsuki exclaimed, "Wait, what?" with a laughable start. A familiar female voice said, "Hey, I know those muscular hairdos." And the two boys turned to see Ochako approaching. With a smile, Goku said, "Hey, Ochako." Izuku smiled as he nodded, "Nice to see you got into Ua as well." The brunette grinned and said, "Yeah. I'm kind of excited about orientation, what about you guys?" Goku shrugged in response, saying, "I'm more excited for the fighting." Izuku deadpanned, "You're always excited for anything related to fighting." Mina shrugged and said, "I'm just looking forward to getting to know everyone." As soon as she said that, a weary voice that none of them recognized said, "If you're here to make friends, pack your stuff and leave." They turned to see a weary-looking man acting like a cranky caterpillar. Izuku shivered because he was afraid of bugs. The bigger boy shuddered and said, "You want to get squashed, little bug. Don't start talking, it skeeves me out." As the group of teenagers took their seats, The man flatly responded, I'm not a bug, this is my sleeping bag. Now go take your seats. Much to their amused surprise, the man introduced himself as, hello, everyone. I'm Shota Aizawa, your teacher. Facepalming, the two Saiyans moaned, you gotta be kidding me. As he took 20 tracksuits from his sleeping bag, the man instructed his students, put these on and meet me outside on the sports field. At that point, everyone's brains stopped braining. Some of the others laughed as Goku asked in confusion, where'd he get a sleeping bag of holding? Later, what? A quirk assessment test, every one of them said, startled. Aizawa informed them, you heard me. We're not even going to bother with orientation. Here at UA, we aren't bound by the usual rules, so that gives teachers free rein in how they teach. He went on. Okay, but why a quirk assessment test? Goku asked, grinning. You guys already saw what we can do during the entrance exam. So what's the point, even? He continued. Izuku nodded and said, in fact, it really seems redundant. In response, Aizawa said, while true, there's something else you may have failed to consider. He looked at the teenager with the Pomeranian hair and said, it's best you see for yourselves. Bakugo, what was your farthest softball throw back in middle school? The blonde then answered, 67 meters. The man said to him, try again, but with your quirk this time. The boy shrugged and walked to the circle after catching the thrown ball. All right, fine, he inquired, any restrictions? The man answered, anything goes, just stay in the circle. The Pomeranian wound up his arm and sighed, just know you asked for it. Die, he cried out, shocking everyone who wasn't used to Katsuki's strength with an explosion from his palm that sent the ball flying with his throw well beyond 67 meters. As he displayed Katsuki's distance of 406 meters, Aizawa clarified, see. This is what I'm talking about, assessing the limits of your quirks and evaluating your potential as pros. Whoa, are you kidding me? Exclaimed Kaminari, a boy. That looks like fun, I want to go, Mina cried. Another boy grinned and said, this is great. Getting to use our quirks as much as we want. The smile on Mina's face said, this looks like fun. Fun, their instructor asked icily, you're training to fight dangerous villains, aid people in disasters and who knows what else, and you call this fun? He asked. Facepalming, Izuku moaned, oh no, he's gonna be one of those types. Yep, Goku agreed with a sigh. To the surprise of his students, the man explained, you all have 3 years to be ready for what the world is going to throw at you. So here's how this is going to work, whoever comes in last place gets expelled. What? Exclaimed Goku. He asked, the hell is wrong with you? Without even blinking, Aizawa informed him, hero hopefuls with no potential get weeded out this way. You better show me it's no mistake you're here. He continued. Izuku snarled and cracked his knuckles, saying, this is driving me crazy. He formed this habit in an attempt to control his temper. Mina rubbed his shoulder and said, easy. You can hopefully blow off some steam in the tests. 50-meter dash. While Goku warmed up with in-place jumping jacks, Izuku stretched while he awaited his turn for the first test. Finally, Aizawa called, son, Midoriya, you're up. And the two positioned themselves. Goku smirked challengingly and taunted, bet you I'm faster. Izuku smirked and shot back, bet you you're slower. Before skidding to a stop at the end of the track, the two took off simultaneously and raced along it at unbelievable speeds. The robot yelled, .004 seconds for both racers. To the surprise of everyone. Iida exclaimed, I didn't even see them move. Mina gasped, so fast. He improved speed. Aizawa nodded, it's not exactly a quirk use, but it works just as well. Test of grip. Izuku sighed and took the test device, squeezing without using his ki because his naturally superhuman strength was more than sufficient. With Goku trailing him at 923 kilograms, he managed to clock in at 975 kilograms. Whoa, the other men exclaimed, startled. Long jump standing. When Goku whooped and leapt into the air, he whistled instead of moving farther with ki and landed on a yellow cloud that carried him the rest of the way. This was Nimbus, a sentient cloud that Master Roshi had given him as a training gift. Kaminari blinked and asked, where'd he get that cloud from? Another boy named Siro nodded and said, that's convenient. It looks comfortable. Ochako gave a nod. Next up was Izuku, who simply performed a standing jump across the track without the use of ki. Momo Yaoyorozu, a girl with black hair, trailed off with wide eyes, asking, "Did he just?" Mina exclaimed, "That's one Hulk-sized leap." Side steps repeated. Gazing at Izuku, Goku asked, "Think we should pull a Saitama?" The giant nodded, "Oh yeah." Then they swerved so quickly that they created afterimages. In fact, Aizawa found it difficult to determine which way they were heading. "All right, that's just absurd." He mentally deadpanned. Throwing a ball. After Katsuki, Ochako was the first to take the ball test, and she used her quirk to get a score of infinity. With his eyes almost bursting from their sockets, Goku screamed, "You actually threw that into space." Izuku mumbled, "That's pretty insane." With a ball thrown to him, Aizawa informed the big teenager, "Midoriya, you're up next." The Saiyan boy nodded as he picked up his ball, prepared to toss it, and ultimately chose to use one for all in order to get the highest score. Except, of course, for Ochako's. He tried to steer clear of as much criticism as possible by channeling one for all into his right arm. But in the middle of the throw, he had a thought and suddenly focused it into his right index finger, sending it flying with a loud boom that blew everyone's hair back. He then summoned an Omega Blaster while the ball was in midair, threw it at it, and set off another explosion, which sent it flying even farther. When the result appeared, Aizawa nearly let out a groan of frustration as he checked his phone. He sighed, indicating that Izuku had launched the ball more than a kilometer away, and said, "You are too powerful, I swear." Izuku turned away, his tail swishing behind him, and merely huffed. In the meantime, Goku made the decision to make use of his recently grown tail by using that prehensile limb to grab the ball. As he prepared himself, he grinned and said to himself, "Okay, this should be good." Once it had a firm hold on the ball, he flicked his tail a couple of times and swung it as hard as he could, sending the orb soaring through the air for a long distance. Aizawa said, "That tail of yours must be seriously durable." This indicated that Goku had received a score comparable to that of Izuku and Katsuki. Later, the newly formed Class 1A gathered around to view the assessment's results after the tests concluded rather quickly. Izuku, Goku, and Katsuki were among the top 5, and Aizawa said, "Okay, I'm going to just show the full list. There's no point in going over each individual score." With a slight smirk, Izuku said, "Hey, lucky us." The Pomeranian grinned and said, "Hey, suck it, nerds." The man says, "And I was lying, no one's going home." That was just a rational deception that was meant to make you go all out in the tests. He continued. Goku sneered, "Worst lie ever of all time." He went on to say. Katsuki snarled, "I want to punch something. Or someone." The words, "unbelievable," made Izuku groan in frustration. Before leaving, Aizawa informed them, "Well, that's the end of class. Grab a syllabus from the classroom before you leave." All Might yelled at the man, "Aizawa, that was a rotten move." The man said to the blonde, "I wanted to get a decent idea of what the students were capable of. Or more accurately, Sun and Midoriya. There's something different about them, but I'm not sure what." He went on. "They have similar powers, similar physiology, but different training." All Might gave a nod. "But I've spoken to their parents and Master Roshi. Their most volatile asset is their Uzaru forms, and in young Midoriya's case, his anger." He continued. "He looks ready to demolish a building with a 1-inch punch at times, so I believe that." Aizawa gave a nod. "But their Uzaru forms, they don't seem like a normal quirk. They feel like something else." He thought about it. One hero also pondered, "You might be overthinking things a bit, but stranger things have happened. Somewhere else." The boy was walking home alone with Izuku toward the end of the day, a frown etched on his face as he moved down the sidewalk. Given the course of the day, he would have thought about walking home with Goku, Iida, Ochako, or Katsuki, but he didn't want to run the risk of losing his temper. "Right now, I really want to destroy something." He gritted his teeth and thought. Mina's voice called out, "Izuku," as the pink girl zipped up beside him. The Saiyan looked at the girl and asked, "Mina?" He asked, "What are you doing here?" The fake alien girl responded, "You seemed frustrated after what happened today, so I wanted to see what was up." As the girl bounced in front of him, the boy sighed and slung his backpack over his shoulder. "I honestly don't think anyone should be near me right now. I'm angry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry." She grinned and said, "I dunno, I like you just the way you are." The gentle giant asked, "Even if I accidentally destroy a mountain?" "Even if you destroy a mountain." The girl who used acid grinned back. Mina grabbed the boy's hand and dragged him beside her, standing as tall as she could to give him a cheek kiss. Izuku exclaimed, a little flush creeping up his cheeks. Mina pulled him along as she said, "Come on, you're coming home with me." With a little yelp, the giant Saiyan said, "Wah, hey, where are we going?" Mina merely dragged him along with a smile on her face without responding. Somewhere else. At about the same moment as Izuku, Goku stumbled away from Ua and moaned, "Oh man, I'm so hungry." Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Ochako caught up to him and asked, "You okay?" To get his attention. Goku held his stomach and moaned, "Oh, hey Ochako. I'm just hungry. Lunch was nowhere near enough for me," he stated to her. "That's surprising, considering the 2 bowls of rice and platters of yakisoba you ate," Iida remarked. As his stomach rumbled, the boy told him, "If you saw how big breakfast is for me, you'd have a pretty good idea of how demanding my appetite is. I can take you somewhere to eat if you'd like," Iida said. "Oh yes please," sighed the combat junkie, searching for something to swallow. Somewhere else. The girl continued to drag the boy along with Izuku and Mina. Izuku asked, growing a little tired of the situation, "Okay, seriously, where are we going?" She said, "My room, obviously. Mom's not home right now so we should be able to hang out without any interruptions," he replied. Izuku shrugged, thinking that hanging out would help him calm down. Okay. When Izuku arrived at Mina's house, the pink-skinned girl pulled him inside, sat him down on the couch, and straddled herself in his lap. The Saiyan laughed and said, "You really wanna make out with me, don't you? Less wanting to just shits and giggles and just to get your mind off what happened today," Mina clarified. Izuku sighed in comprehension, "Not that I blame you. That stunt Aizawa-sensei pulled was less than pleasing." "Yeah," the acid girl nodded, encircling him by the neck and kissing him. She moaned in pleasure, interpreting his slight astonishment as a chance to put her tongue in his mouth. Having regained his composure, Izuku put his arms around her waist and returned the kiss, pushing her tongue back and entering her mouth. Mina's eyes opened and tiny pink hearts were visible in them as the 2 parted ways after the boy had made out with her for nearly 5 minutes. Her breath was still heavy when she caught it. "Oh man, that felt so good," she exhaled as she nestled her head in the bend of his neck and rested on his chest. Izuku held her close while he sighed, "It really did." Mina hummed as she ran her hands down the boy's shoulders to his chest, hinting that she might remove his shirt. "Wanna keep going? If you do, I'm more than willing," Izuku replied, "only until your mom gets home." Mina unbuttoned his shirt while he unbuttoned hers, exposing the reddish-pink bra she was wearing, and they began making out once more. Under his shirt, Mina could also see Izuku's muscles, which, based on their appearance, she was certain were made of marble or diamond. The acid girl grinned and began to slowly kiss him from his cheeks to his neck and finally to his chest, saying, "You're perfect." And when they parted ways, the 2 gasped as they separated, breathing heavily, "I love you." They snapped their heads to the front door when Hahari said, "Do you now?" and saw the model in question grinning like a gremlin. We can explain. Mina's cheeks turned purple as she squeaked in shame. The model MILF grinned and sighed, "I really should have known this would happen, you're so much like me." "I can confirm that," Izuku blushed and muttered. He was relieved that Hahari wouldn't try to castrate him with a rusty teaspoon. Mina's mother, Hahari, had caught Izuku and Mina making out in the woman's living room, so they immediately started to untangle themselves from one another. Still grinning, Hahari asked, "So, when did you 2 decide to start doing this?" The young Saiyan said clumsily, glancing sideways at his girlfriend to quickly shift the topic, "Pretty much just now." The acid girl asked, "Oh, Mom, didn't you say that you had something you wanted to ask Izuku yesterday?" The model looked at Izuku and nodded, saying, "Oh, right. Thanks for the reminder, sweetie." "Izuku, I'm curious. Your mother, Mina's mentioned her a few times but never made mention of your father." She responded, "That makes me wonder, is she widowed, divorced or single?" She responded, "Why do you ask?" Izuku asked inquisitively, feeling that the question was not hostile, but he was curious as to why it was being raised. "Well, you see, Mina also told me that your mother also knows our mutual friend Mitsuki Bakugo and I happened to set her up with her husband Masaru. So, I was actually hoping to see that, if your mother happens to be on the market, I could try to work my magic again with her." Hahari responded. He asked about his surrogate father, and Izuku recalled, I recall asking her once, and she said she was divorced from dad for some reason. It happened when I was really young, so I don't know the full details. He said. The woman purred in contemplation for a moment. That makes me wonder. Well, when you get the chance, tell her that Mitsuki and I always have a woman's night with the mothers in our friend group. She should most definitely come join us for our next outing, because we're going to our favorite personal exercise instructor this Friday, and he happens to be very single, and happens to like older women. He replied. Izuku asked, do I want to know who you're talking about? His name is Soman Sanejiyama. He has a daughter named Kagaya and happens to be looking to remarry after losing his wife when his daughter was born. The lady clarified. The giant boy raised an eyebrow and asked, you think he'll take an interest in my mother? The pink model nodded in response, saying, I think it might very well be mutual. Izuku concluded, not seeing the point in meddling in the affairs of single mothers, I think I'll stay out of it. He heard the woman say, just be sure to tell her, all right. The burly boy nodded and said, I'll let her know when I get home. The mother nodded, perfect. As she left, she said, well, you two have fun, I have to get ready for a fashion show rehearsal. With a knowing undertone, she added, just not too much fun, okay. Mom, Mina exclaimed in shame, her face going completely purple. The two sat back down on the couch as the woman vanished from view, and they remained there in a somewhat awkward silence until they realized that Hahari had essentially given them the all-clear to pick up where they left off. Mina, now in, fuck it, let's do it, mode, threw the Saiyan boy to the couch and kissed him just as he was about to bring up this point. Since it felt good at the moment, Izuku simply followed the flow and kept her close. Somewhere else. Meanwhile, at about the same moment, Ochako was leading a rather famished and worn-out Goku somewhere to eat. In the process, the brunette actually caught a glimpse of two figures that she and Goku eventually recognized. It was Himiko and Krillin, and they appeared to be on their way to Osaka Densha, a restaurant. However, it appeared as though the two had arrived at the location at random and were not on a date. The fact that Krillin was wearing a Shiketsu uniform and Himiko was wearing a UA uniform was also intriguing. When Himiko began hanging out with Krillin, the brunette muttered, well that's odd. She tried to remember when Himiko mentioned that, but she couldn't remember. She shrugged and said, they must have just decided to go to the same place. As he and Himiko were ready to enter, Goku called out to his friend, hey Krillin. Oh, Goku, the bald teenager said, turning around and blinking in surprise. Ochako, Himiko cried with joy as she gave her best friend a hug. Ochako gave her friend a hug in return and remarked, fancy seeing you guys here. She inquired, you two know each other? Krillin informed her, nope, we just met, actually. Sorry I wasn't able to walk back from school with you, homegirl, I was put in class 1B and we ended up leaving class early. Himiko clarified. Well, I hope your class was better than mine. We had a quirk assessment test and skipped orientation. Goku sighed. The blonde girl whispered, I was wondering why you weren't there when orientation happened. Krillin sighed, well my orientation was boring as hell. He said to his best friend, I'm going to assume that those tests make you quite hungry. With a moan, the Saiyan said, and then some, his stomach was rumbling. As she entered the building, Ochako said, that's our cue to head in and take our seats. Somewhere else, Katsuki Bakugo was on his way inside Hell's Cauldron, a spicy ramen restaurant, when he ran into someone else who was also going there. An apology from a woman said, whoops. My bad. The blonde barked, then stopped himself from deflecting as he looked at the owner of the voice, swearing his heart skipped a beat upon seeing her. Watch where you're, never mind, don't worry about it. With six-pack abs, an FF cup bust, and a heart-shaped ass, the girl in question was about his age and slightly more muscular and curvaceous than most girls their age. She also had striking silver eyes and naturally white hair, which Katsuki actually thought was fascinating. Additionally, through the open buttons of her uniform, she displayed a tattoo of a peach inside a heart on her right breast. Speaking of that, the Pomeranian saw her tattoo and, of course, the iconic Shiketsu hat because she had some of the buttons on her Shiketsu uniform undone, giving her a little boob window. Who are you? He inquired, acknowledging in his mind that this girl had a tough appearance. She said, Kagaya Sanejiyama. And who are you? The blonde smirked and said, Katsuki Bakugo, the future #1 hero. Kagaya smirked and teased, "Ooh, those are fighting words. I hope you don't mind me taking that position for myself." The Pomeranian laughed and said, "Dream on. Bet you can't even handle this place's spicy ramen, much less being number 1. He grumbled. "Ha, I could handle 5x the amount of spice those noodles have," said Kagaya. Katsuki smiled and said, "Oh, it's on." He challenged, "You, me. Spicy ramen contest. Let's go." Before continuing, Kagaya smiled and said, "Sounds like a plan." Then she abruptly grabbed the boy near her by the collar of his shirt. With their faces inches apart, she purred with a seductive smirk, "Loser pays for dinner, does that sound good to you, tough guy?" The bomber, who already liked this girl, grinned and said, "Fine by me. Hope you got enough money in your purse." In fact, she was attractively tough. She said, "Don't have one," and then reached into her cleavage to retrieve a thin wallet. She went on, "I hope that isn't a problem." Katsuki shrugged and said, "Nope." He smiled and said, "Now, let's eat." As the two went inside for their little competition. Time skip. By the following day, things appeared to have changed. Interestingly, Mina, Goku, Izuku, and Katsuki were all in varying states of disarray that suggested what they had been up to the day before. For instance, Mina's hair was untidy, and her pink body was covered in hickeys. Izuku, on the other hand, was wearing purple-pink lipstick and was in a similar situation. After seemingly sleep floating into class on his cloud nimbus, Goku appeared to have filled his belly and was in a food coma. Additionally, Katsuki. A rare expression on Katsuki's face indicated that he had consumed too much spicy food. He also moaned a little and held his stomach. Since Katsuki rarely had this expression, Izuku was truly taken aback when he saw it. Izuku wondered what had happened for it to reappear because it was so uncommon that he had only seen it once before. It would be a very interesting day. Time skip. Later at lunch, Goku finally awoke from his food coma, Katsuki had finally relieved himself, and Izuku and Mina appeared somewhat more open to discussing the reason behind their love bites. Which resulted in the following discussions. Katsuki gaped in exasperation, "Wait, you and Pinky actually?" "Yeah, we're a couple now." Mina blushed as she said it. "We have known each other for several months, so it was a matter of time." She continued. Izuku wiped some lipstick from his cheek and said, "But to answer your question, we didn't get that far past giving each other these bites." "What happened to you, though?" asked the girl who used acid. She looked at Katsuki and said, "Seriously, you looked like you overdid something." The blonde grunted back, "I ran into a girl at my favorite ramen place. She said she could handle spicy ramen better than me, which led to a contest that I lost." He grumbled. "Someone outdid you," Izuku exclaimed, suddenly stunned. This was actually quite shocking because it was practically unheard of for someone to beat Katsuki in a spicy ramen eating competition. "You're kidding," Goku exclaimed, truly taken aback. "Yeah, and y'all wanna know the real weird thing? She had the same kind of appetite you guys have." The dog replied, "And I didn't know for certain because I think she had it hidden under her uniform, but I'm pretty sure she also had the same tail." He continued. Izuku and Goku looked at one another as a result. It was crucial that they meet her if there was another Saiyan on the planet. The kind giant said, "Do you think you could introduce us to her after school?" The bomber nodded and said, "I got her contact info, so yeah." He clarified, "She goes to Shikatsu, apparently." Just as a familiar blonde hopped into the table, Goku whispered, "Just like Krillin." "Hey guys." Himiko chuckled while giving Ochako a hug. "So, what are you guys talking about over here?" she inquired. Goku shrugged and said, "Someone that defeated Katsuki in a spicy ramen eating contest." Ochako grimaced, nearly tasting the spicy noodles. That must have been a nightmare for their tongue. The bomber corrected, opposite of that, round face. She took it like a champ. With a playful twinkle in her eye, Himiko purred, "Oh, so this mystery person was a girl, huh?" She asked, "Well, was she cute?" "Well, Katsuki coughed, his face blushing slightly. She had naturally white hair that definitely made her look exotic. He acknowledged. He remembered, silver eyes, too. Mina blinked, naturally white hair and silver eyes. I mean those aren't exactly super rare traits, but, yeah, someone with both of those would definitely be called exotic. She thought. If you ask me, I think it sounds like Bakugo's got the hots for this new girl. Himiko said quietly. Ochako nodded and said, agreed. Later, Hero Basic Training. The next major class in the children's curriculum and the reason they were there in the first place, came later in the day. The instructor was none other than. Upon entering the classroom, All Might yelled, "I am here," and immediately captured everyone's interest. He added, walking through the door like a normal person. As he made his way to the class podium, Goku exclaimed, "Hey, it's All Might," as the man in his Silver Age costume entered. The symbol of peace stood at the podium and greeted the students, saying, "Welcome to the most important class at UA High, think of it as Harrowing 101. Here you'll learn the basics of being a pro, and what it means to fight in the name of good." He held up a battle card and continued, "Let's get into it. Today's class will pull no punches." With smiles on their faces, Goku and Katsuki yelled, "Fight training together." Izuku grinned and said, "Well, this is going to be fun." One hero took out a remote control and pushed a button, causing a number of shelves to emerge from the wall. "Now, the most important part about a hero is looking good," he exclaimed. "These were made using the specs on your Quirk registration forms that you sent in before school started. So put these on and meet me on training ground beta," he continued. Goku laughed and reached for his case, saying, "Oh yeah, I've been waiting a long time for this." Izuku also laughed and reached for his case. Later, All Might waited for his students to arrive at training ground beta until they gradually began to emerge, each in their own costume. In particular, Izuku wore the Saiyan armor that was included with his original ship, but he was also wearing purple pants made of a similar material, and his waist was encircled by a green animal pelt. The giant teenager examined himself and nodded, "Yeah, this works for me." He backed away from memory lane and exclaimed, "They say clothes make the heroes, and you, kids, are the proof. From this day forward you are now heroes in training." He grinned. "This is getting me all revved up. You look so cool. Now, shall we get started, ya bunch of newbies?" he asked. Goku, on the other hand, was now practically leaping with joy. As expected, he was wearing the same orange cane GI uniform that he had worn during his training with Master Roshi. His only support equipment was his Nimbus Cloud and a red bow staff. Mina approached Izuku wearing a domino mask, a sleeveless fur collar jacket, and a tight blue and purple camouflage suit. "Where in the world did you find armor like that?" she asked. Izuku informed her, "It's a long story." "Oh hey, Goku, Izuku!" exclaimed Ochako as she rushed toward the pair. She grinned and said, "Those are nice costumes, not too flashy." Goku was now blushing at the girl's current appearance, and the larger Saiyan gave a small laugh as the two turned to face her. Ochako's skin-tight astronaut suit made him a little nervous. He nodded and said, You too." She nodded uneasily and said, "Yeah, this costume's skin-tight. Not really my style." When they were all gathered, All Might raised his voice. All Might gathered everyone around him and said, "Now that you're ready, it's time for combat training." "Sir," Iida yelled, holding up his hand. Katsuki deadpanned, "You're kidding me with the hand up, right?" The man said, "Yes, young Iida." As the armored speedster asked, "I've noticed that this is the same area we conducted our practical exam in. Is this going to be urban combat?" The symbol of peace answered, "Not quite. I'm moving you 2 steps ahead. Now, most of the villain fights you see on the news take place outside. However, statistically speaking run-ins with the most dastardly evildoers take place indoors." He clarified. Having heard a lot about home invasions, backroom dealings, and the like from his mentor, Izuku concluded, so in other words, stuff like home invasions, backroom dealings and the like. Precisely. Truly intelligent villains stay hidden in the shadows. So today you'll be split into groups of good guys and bad guys and do 2-on-2 indoor battles. All Might gave a nod. Sue questioned, "Isn't this a little advanced?" Goku informed her, "Not as much as you'd think." One hero nodded and said, "The best experience is what you get on the battlefield. But remember you can't just punch a robot this time. You're dealing with actual people now." He continued. Iida asked, "Who will be fighting who?" Momo questioned, "Will you be deciding who wins?" Katsuki asked, "How much can we hurt the other team?" Ochako squeaked, "Will we have to worry about expulsion? According to Gohan's grandson, are we being split up randomly?" Aoyama smiled and said, "Isn't this Cape Tray chick?" The bulky figure snarled, "I'm not done talking," and silenced his class. To Izuku's annoyance, he then produced a script. "Listen up. The situation is this. The villains have hidden a nuclear payload somewhere in this building and it's up to heroes to stop them by capturing them or retrieving the weapon. Likewise, the villains win if they do the opposite. He clarified. Izuku shrugged. So a basic action movie setup. Okay. With a sigh, Goku observed, seems kinda boring. Katsuki grunted, at least we have something to blow steam off on. All Might informed them, we'll select teams by drawing lots because time is limited. Iida asked, isn't there a better way? Izuku asked, receiving a nod in response, you know how pros have to team up with each other on the spot in the field. This likely references that, you gotta be quick to adapt if you wanna get the job done. He said. Iida nodded and said, ah, I see. After a single drawing sequence, Goku was paired with Ochako, Katsuki with Iida, and Izuku with Mina. As she held Izuku's arm, the pink-skinned girl giggled, huh. What are the odds? With his tail around her waist, the Saiyan asked, are you complaining? Nope, Mina responded with a chirp. Their teacher held up two orbs that essentially indicated that it would be Izuku and Mina versus Kota and Sato. All right, I declare that the first to fight will be, these guys. She exclaimed. The Saiyan observed, well, this will be interesting. The muscular hero informed his class that the villain team would enter first, followed by the hero team approximately 10 minutes later. He beckoned the others to follow him, adding, everyone else will come with me to the observation room. Later, as she and Izuku waited outside, Mina thought, well, this class sure is going smoother than the last one, but her gaze gradually shifted to the pelt around the boy's waist. She inquired, where'd you get that? The giant answered, it's from a bear I was able to make friends with when I was younger. He died of old age 2 years ago. I was there in his last moments. I turned his fur into this pelt in memory of him. He said sorrowfully. With a hint of morbid discomfort in her voice, Mina grinned and said, that's so sweet, in a kind of morbid sort of way. Prior to All Might's voice booming over the intercom, Izuku stated, I just wanted to keep him close to me in a sense. He guided her along after using his ki sensing to locate Kota and Sato, saying, come on. Let's go. Somewhere else, Kaminari asked, so who do you guys think has this match? Hard to say. Midoriya seems obvious, but I'm not sure he'll do so well with those tight spaces, replied Kirishima. With a dismissive wave, Goku said, don't worry about that. If he ends up not having enough room, he'll just make room. He continued. Zero said, you're kidding, right? Katsuki said, no, he's being completely serious. If there's one thing that these guys need to realize quickly, it's that you don't want to tick Deku off. He said, and why's that? Asked Shoto. The blonde yelled, because, dumbass, the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. Seeing the writing on the wall, All Might nodded, which makes him a dangerous enemy in a fight. And how daring it was to write it.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.